Chapter 261. Shang Junlin woke up from his dream and felt that his arms were empty. He stretched out his hand and tried to reach for the person in front of him. He was completely awake. The scene in front of him made him pause. Although it was also an imperial palace, it was obviously different from the one he was used to. It was closer to the one Shen Yu had before he entered the palace. Eunuch Meng walked in carefully when he heard the commotion. "Your Majesty, where is a Yu?" Shang Junlin picked up the clothes beside him and asked. "This. Your Majesty, may I know who you are asking about?" Eunuch Meng was even more careful. The palace servants beside him were also tense. Recently, the emperor's temperament had become more and more violent. They could lose their lives if they made a mistake. They had to be extra careful. Shang Junlin sized him up without batting an eyelid. There were no traces of lying. He looked around. The layout of the bedchamber did not seem to be something that could be changed overnight. In addition, the palace servants' fearful expressions did not seem to be fake. All the signs pointed to the most impossible answer. He did not know how he came to a world without a Yu. No, he could not make a conclusion now. It was possible that a Yu was not by his side. He had to figure out the situation in front of him first before he made a decision. Soon, Shang Junlin understood his situation. In this world, the one who entered the palace was not Shen Yu. It was Shen Qingran, the son of a concubine from the Count of North. He was not even seen before, let alone being loved by the emperor. He was directly thrown into the palace to fend for himself. Fortunately, there was no involvement. Shang Junlin sighed and raised his hand to signal Eunuch Meng to continue. Young Master Shen was taken out of the palace. Your Majesty said not to care about him. I heard that he is now with King Yu. King Yu? Shang Junlin interrupted Eunuch Meng. Yes, in this world, King Yu was not punished. Now that he had gathered a group of people, it was obvious that he wanted to rebel. Shang Junlin thought about how Shen Yu cared about King Yu in the beginning. He vaguely understood something. He summoned the hidden dragon guards. Go and investigate King Yu. Tell me everything about the people around him. Tell me everything. Yes. The hidden dragon guards accepted the order and left. After a few days, Shang Junlin figured out what had happened in this world. Because Shen Yu did not enter the palace, many things developed differently from his previous life. His actions became more and more brutal, causing the people to complain. The King of Yu took this opportunity to wantonly win the hearts of the people. The people behind the King of Yu had not revealed themselves yet. Shang Junlin already knew who the mastermind was. He was not afraid of these people. The most important thing now was to find Shen Yu. If he guessed correctly, at this time, Shen Yu should be beside King Yu. His Yu had chosen King Yu in this world. This realization set off a storm in Shang Junlin's heart. He wished he could destroy everything in front of him to vent his anger. While the hidden dragon guards were investigating the King of Yu, Shang Junlin purged the imperial court. He got rid of those who were disloyal and had a firm grasp of the imperial court's power. Shang Junlin's actions were too fast. Those who thought they were well hidden were uprooted before they could react. Shang Junlin did not even give them a chance to retaliate. After he dealt with these people swiftly, the hidden dragon guards also sent news back. After handing over the imperial court to the Prime Minister and Fang Jun, Shang Junlin secretly left the capital. He had obtained Shen Yu's location. He wanted to find him. At the same time, he also sent people to look for the Ji clan. He did not know if the seal on Shen Yu was still around in this life. It was better to be prepared if he could find the Ji clan. As for Imperial Physician Ji Yu, Shang Junlin could not find him in the Imperial Physician Hospital. He only found out after he sent people to investigate. Imperial Physician Ji Yu was implicated in a case from 4 years ago. Since then, Ji Yu Huai had disappeared. Shang Junlin ordered people to look for Ji Yu Huai. In his previous world, Ji Yu Huai was already married to Imperial Physician Ji Yu at this time. With Ji Yu Huai's obsession with Imperial Physician Ji Yu, Shang Junlin did not think that Imperial Physician Ji Yu would watch his beloved die in prison. After sending people to investigate, they found some clues. The real imperial physician Ji Yu should have been taken away by Ji Yu Huai. King Yu's fief was located in the south of Yuju. It was not as cold as the capital during winter. It was just that there was a lot of rain. After Shun Yu came here, he was not used to the cold and wet weather. He was sick for a long time before he slowly recovered. After a few years, he was able to adapt to the climate here. Young master, His Highness King Yu sent a message saying that he has something to do today and can't come. The maid carefully handed the cloak to him. She could not help but complain about the injustice for her young master. How could King Yu have something to do? It was obvious that he was fascinated by the newcomer. Shun Yu's hands paused. He took the cloak and put it on. The weather is good today. I will go out for a walk. I don't need anyone to follow me. Yes. Shun Yu tidied himself up and left the residence. In fact, he knew that the King of Yu failed to keep the appointment mostly because of Shun Qingran. Since Shun Qingran came here, she liked to target him everywhere. She wanted to take away everything he cared about, including the King of Yu. Everyone thought that he would be angry, but in fact, he didn't feel much in his heart. Shun Yu was thinking about something and did not notice that someone was riding a horse in front of him. When he heard a cry of surprise, he fell into a warm embrace. Shun Yu was hugged and turned around. He looked up at the man who was tightly pursing his lips. Thank you for saving me, young master. Shang Junlin stared blankly at the person in his arms. He had been in this world for several months and finally found a Yu. A Yu in this world looked very sick. Her face was pale and her body was weak. It was as if she could be blown away by the wind. When the horse galloped towards them, his heart almost stopped. At that moment, his actions were faster than his thoughts and he carried her away from danger. She didn't care if she would leave a bad impression on Yu if she did this for the first time. Sorry. Are the two young masters okay? I don't know why the horse was frightened and almost caused a disaster. At this time, the rider stopped the frightened horse and walked over. Shang Junlin woke up from his dream and let go of the person in his arms. Are you hurt? Shun Yu shook her head. No matter what, the man on the horse had to stay and compensate. Shun Yu didn't want to be in a deadlock with him, so he accepted the compensation. After the man left, only Shun Yu and the man who saved him were left. May I know how to address you? Shun Yu was a person who would repay kindness. This person saved him and he would not do nothing. My surname is Lin. In the end, it was the fief of the King of Yu. In order to not attract attention and to get closer to Shun Yu, Shang Junlin changed his appearance and identity. He did not know what had happened in this world, but according to the information that the hidden dragon guards had found, his Yu was completely devoted to the King of Yu. How could Shang Junlin allow this situation to continue? No matter how difficult it was, he would think of a way to get Yu back to his side. Young Master Lin. Shun Yu looked at the sky and saw that it was almost time for dinner. He invited Shang Junlin to have dinner together. To thank young Master Lin for saving my life, would you like to have dinner with me? Shang Junlin could not ask for more. Shun Yu chose a restaurant he frequented and asked while walking, I often come here. Is there anything you don't eat? Shang Junlin shook his head. I'm fine with anything. Shun Yu was a regular customer. The boss welcomed them personally and led them to the private room that Shun Yu frequented. Young master, do you want to eat your usual food today? Shun Yu ordered a few signature dishes and gave the choice to the man sitting opposite him. Shang Junlin ordered a few dishes. Shun Yu was surprised to find that the man ordered all the dishes that he liked. There was wine on the table. Shun Yu poured a cup for each of them. When she poured the wine, her wide sleeve slipped down and revealed a thin and white wrist. Shang Junlin looked at the wrist that was almost skinny and his heart ached. Shun Yu put the wine cup in front of the man. He thought of something and said, this is fruit wine. It's not easy to get drunk. If young Master Lin wants to drink something stronger, I'll ask them to serve you again. No need. Fruit wine is very good. It's easy to forget yourself when you're drunk. Not long after, the dishes were served. The two ate and chatted. For the first time, Shun Yu felt that there was someone in the world who could get along with him so well. During the meal, the relationship between the two of them had become much closer. After the meal, The two walked out of the restaurant side by side. Shang Junlin looked at the gradually darkening sky and said, "It's getting dark. Let me send you back." Perhaps the other party's gaze was too gentle. Shen Yu did not refuse. His vigilance against strangers seemed to have no effect on this person. The two of them chatted as they walked, and the other party could pick up on any topic. It had been a long time since Shen Yu had a simple chat with someone. When he talked with someone, it was mostly with a purpose. Today was the first time. When they talked excitedly, Shen Yu's eyes became brighter and brighter. The way he addressed Shang Junlin also changed from the unfamiliar young Master Lin to the slightly intimate Brother Lin. "Brother Lin, you said that you just came to Yuju. Do you have a place to stay? If you don't mind, you can stay here for a while." Shang Junlin did not expect that Shen Yu would directly invite him to stay. He was stunned. When he spoke, Shen Yu was looking at him. Naturally, he saw his movement. He realized that his words were inappropriate and hurriedly said, "I was just kidding. It's not that I don't want to." How could Shang Junlin miss such a good opportunity? He interrupted Shen Yu. "I was afraid that you would find me troublesome. Why would I dislike you? To be honest, I just came to Yuju and I haven't found a suitable place to stay. I wonder if you can take me in for a few days." Shen Yu pursed his lips. "Brother Lin, you don't have to make up for me. I'm not making up for you. I'm the one who wants you to make things convenient for me." Shen Yu liked peace and quiet. The place he lived in was a little remote. It was a small house, but the layout inside revealed the owner's care. The corridors, the pavilions, the terraces, and the attic were all pleasing to the eye. Shen Yu took Shang Junlin to walk around the courtyard. Shang Junlin took the lantern from the maid and walked beside Shen Yu. "Sorry, I'm not used to being served." Shen Yu waved his hand and asked the maid to leave. "I don't like it either." Usually, Shen Yu rarely let the maid serve him. He wouldn't let others do his personal things. The housekeeper received Shen Yu's order and tidied up the place where Shang Junlin was going to live. He led him there. Shen Yu also went back to his own courtyard to rest. The next morning, Shen Yu woke up. "What's that sound outside?" "It's Master Lin practicing swordsmanship," the maid answered. Shen Yu changed his clothes and walked out. As expected, he saw the man practicing swordsmanship in the courtyard. Seeing him, the man put away his sword and walked over. "Why are you up so early?" As he spoke, he took the cloak from the maid and put it on Shen Yu. His movements were so skillful as if he had done it thousands of times. Shen Yu was stunned. "I usually get up around this time." "It's too early." Shang Junlin paused. "You're not in good health. You should sleep more." Genius 1 second. Remember this website, www.bk50. CC Literature Mobile Version Website, mbk50. CC. Chapter 262. Obviously, Shang Junlin felt that it was early. He told Shen Yu that he didn't have to wake up so early if he had nothing to do. Shen Yu wasn't busy these days. He stayed in the mansion all day. Shang Junlin wanted to spend all day with him. He still remembered his character and went out to work during the day. He told Shen Yu that he was a merchant from the south. He had made some preparations before he came. However, with Shen Yu's intelligence, he might have realized that something was wrong, especially when they were together all the time. Shang Junlin didn't expect that everything would go so smoothly when he came. He thought that he would have to put in a lot of effort to make friends with Shen Yu. He didn't expect that he would be invited to stay in the mansion because of an accident. Wasn't it a little too easy? Shang Junlin thought as he talked to the hidden dragon guards who also disguised themselves and came to Yuju. Shen Yu sat in the courtyard basking in the sun, reading a book in his hand. The sunlight shone on his face, making his skin look even fairer and more translucent. Shang Junlin, who was walking over, stopped in his tracks, but Shen Yu had already raised his head. "Brother Lin, you came back earlier than usual today." Shang Junlin strode over. "What is you doing?" "Reading." Shen Yu waved the book in his hand. Suddenly, he smelled a fragrance. He looked over. "What's that smell? It smells so good. I brought you some snacks." Shang Junlin took out the wrapped snacks and joked, "You have a good nose." What snacks? The fragrance was too tempting. Shunyu couldn't help but focus on the snacks. It's the new Fuyun cake from Jinlu. Try it. Shong Junlin said as he opened the paper bag. Without the barrier, the fragrance was even stronger. The sweetness of the food mixed with the unique fragrance of flowers was so tempting that it made one salivate. Shunyu never mistreated himself when it came to food. Hearing this, he reached out to take it. Shong Junlin did not give it to him. Instead, he fed it directly to his mouth. I washed my hands before I came in. You still have to read later. This is more convenient. Shunyu paused for a moment and took a bite of the dessert in the man's hand. The outermost layer of the Fuyun cake was coated with a layer of white powdered sugar. The inside of the cake was soft and glutinous. With a bite, the sweet taste spread in the mouth. Shunyu's eyes lit up. Seeing Shunyu's attitude from the young man's expression, Shong Junlin felt relieved. He bought the lotus cloud cake according to Shunyu's preference. Seeing that he liked it, Shong Junlin smiled and said, "There are many delicious snacks in this shop. If you like them, I'll bring more for you next time." After getting along with each other for a few days, Shong Junlin found that Shunyu did not like to go out. Perhaps, it was related to his illness. Shong Junlin planned to let Imperial Doctor Wu check Shunyu when the two of them got closer. After Shunyu finished eating a piece of lotus cloud cake, Shong Junlin took out another piece. The two of them fed each other and ate each other. Not long after, the pastries in the paper bag could be seen. Shunyu did not expect that he had unknowingly eaten so much. He was a little embarrassed and pushed away Shong Junlin's hand. "Brother Lin, don't you want to eat?" The man turned his hand and continued to feed the lotus cloud cake to Shunyu's mouth. "I brought it back for you after I tasted it. Ayu likes it. Eat more." After eating, Shong Junlin took out a handkerchief and carefully wiped the crumbs from Shunyu's mouth. His actions were too natural. Shunyu froze on the spot. Before he could say anything to refuse, the man had already taken back his hand. Shunyu unconsciously clenched his fingers that were holding the book. He looked at the man. The man acted as usual, as if he had just done something ordinary. But Shunyu remembered very clearly that they had just met, but they were so familiar with each other that it was as if they had been together for many years. Whether it was the man's familiarity with him or his lack of resistance to the man's approach, it was not in line with his understanding. Since that day, the man had a new hobby. He brought back all kinds of delicious food to feed Shunyu. If Shunyu did not want to go out, it was okay. He could bring back all kinds of delicious and fun things. There were many new things in Shunyu's bedroom, small ornaments, books for relaxation, chess, all of them were brought back by Shong Junlin. It was spring, and the weather was getting warmer. Shong Junlin chose a location for his first shop in Yuju and invited Shunyu to take a look. "You can't stay in his courtyard all day long. I have booked a shop there. I wonder if you can help me take a look." Shunyu thought for a while. He had not gone out for a long time. Moreover, the man's gaze on him was too hard to refuse. So he agreed. Shong Junlin took a cloak and draped it over Shunyu. Shunyu tilted his head slightly so that the man could tie the cloak for him. The two of them got on the carriage and went to the downtown area. The shop that Shong Junlin chose was located in the downtown area. It was a small two-story building that had already opened. It looked like there were many people coming in and out. Shunyu felt that the business should be very good. The carriage stopped at one side. Shong Junlin got off first and then reached out his hand. Shunyu looked at the hand that was reaching towards him. He was stunned for a moment, but then he put his hand on it. He was helped out of the carriage. Shunyu and Shong Junlin walked into the shop side by side. They found that most of the customers were women. They could not help but feel a little curious. "Brother Lin, what kind of business is this?" Shunyu did not have the hobby of inquiring about other people's business. Shong Junlin did not take the initiative to talk about business, so he did not ask. Their conversation had always been about eating, drinking, and playing. Neither of them rashly crossed the line. "These are some things for women." Shong Junlin took Shunyu inside. He introduced them as they walked. "This is lipstick. It comes in various colors. This is an eyebrow pencil," Shen Yu looked at those items. They were placed on the shelves. They looked beautiful and had a variety of patterns. They were very suitable for women's preferences. I didn't expect Brother Lin to know so much about these things. Shen Yu's tone was full of surprise. Not only those that the man introduced, Shen Yu also saw a lot of other beautiful accessories. Just looking at them made people unable to put them down. In front of them, there were many madams and young ladies. Without stopping, the two of them went to the second floor. There was no one on the second floor. It seemed that the owner specially used it to receive guests. The waiter served hot tea and quietly left. Shang Junlin went out for a while. When he came back, he held a brocade box in his hand. He handed the brocade box to Shen Yu. This is a small gift for a Yu. When the brocade box was opened, there was a jade pendant inside. It was completely white and warm to the touch. Shen Yu subconsciously wanted to refuse. Don't be in a hurry to refuse. Shang Junlin seemed to have predicted what he was going to say. He interrupted him. I've stayed in a Yu's house for so long. This jade pendant is a thank you gift. Shang Junlin took out the jade pendant. He did not allow Shen Yu to refuse and fastened it on his waist. Shen Yu looked down. He wanted to hold the jade pendant, but Shang Junlin's hand was still there. Their fingers touched. Shen Yu retracted his hand like lightning. Under the cover of his wide sleeves, his fingers curled up. Shang Junlin straightened his body and looked at him. Yu, don't talk. Shen Yu raised his hand and put his index finger on Shang Junlin's lips. When their eyes met, Shang Junlin's eyes were filled with emotions that he could not understand. At this moment, Shen Yu did not know what he was thinking. Or perhaps, he was not thinking at all. The two of them looked at each other and stood quietly for a while. Shen Yu was the first to look away. Shang Junlin coughed and stepped back a little. Shen Yu realized that the two of them were very close to each other. He never liked people to get close to him, but this time, he did not feel it at all. The distance between the two of them had crossed the line. Shang Junlin picked up another box on the table and said, "There's an auction today. Yu, do you want to go and take a look?" Shen Yu asked, "Auction?" Shang Junlin explained, "It's held by a famous chamber of commerce in Daehuan. This time, the location is in Yuju. I have a few invitation letters with me." Shen Yu remembered that 2 days ago, someone had sent an invitation letter to his residence. He was not interested, so he asked the servant to put it aside. He worked for King Yu. His presence was not high, but it was not low either. Everyone who had some connections knew that he had a lot of power. His attitude towards him had always been to rope him in. However, very few people had seen him in person. Many people only knew that there was someone like him by King Yu's side. As long as he was in charge of anything, he would be able to solve it perfectly. As for what this person looked like, no one knew. In the beginning, Shen Yu had suspected that the man had an ulterior motive for approaching him. He had asked Ying Hua to investigate the man's identity, but nothing had been found. When they interacted, he did not feel any ambition from the man. The two of them arrived at the auction house. After their identities were verified, they were brought to a private room upstairs. If there's anything you want, you can buy it directly. Brother Lin is so rich. Shen Yu raised his eyebrows. My family's business is not big, but it's enough to buy things for a Yu, Shang Junlin said. I can buy it myself. Since the two of them met, just like how Shen Yu never asked about Shang Junlin's personal matters, Shang Junlin never asked about his. Shen Yu thought that he was just an ordinary businessman who did not know his identity. That was why he said that he wanted to buy things for him. Shen Yu did not want their relationship to involve power and interests, so he did not reveal his identity. He looked at the man and thought, Brother Lin has always been keen on buying things for him. Did he think that he was someone who did not have enough money? I know, Shang Junlin smiled, I just feel that I hit it off with a Yu, so I want to do something for a Yu. A Yu does not need to think too much. Really? Shen Yu was doubtful. Otherwise, what does a Yu think I am doing this for? Shen Yu did not know why this person was so nice to him for no reason, so he naturally could not answer. While they were talking, the auction had already started. The two of them were in a very good private room. Shun Yu was not interested in the first few items until the auctioneer brought out a plant with thin branches and leaves. Shun Yu's interest was piqued. Shang Junlin recognized the plant as Junling and began to bid for it. Later, only the people in the other private room bid for it. Shang Junlin was too lazy to waste his breath and directly said that no matter how much the other party bid, he would double it. The Junling successfully fell into his hands. The auctioneer brought the Junling into the private room and said that he wanted to see them. There is nothing to see. Shang Junlin took the flower and said to Shun Yu, when we go back, let's raise it in a Yu's room, okay? Shun Yu calculated the money that the other party had spent and planned to give him a little more when they went back. Because the person in the other private room had increased the price, the man had spent far more than what he should have. After the auction ended, the two of them were about to leave when they were stopped by someone. Young masters, please wait. My master wants to invite you to have a chat. Please. The person made an inviting gesture, obviously not wanting them to leave. Who is your master? Shun Yu asked. You will know when you go. The person's attitude was arrogant. Shun Yu could roughly guess that the person's identity was probably not ordinary, but he was not someone that anyone could bully in Yuju. Since this person did not want him to leave, he might as well not leave. He stood there with his arms crossed. If he wants to see someone, shouldn't he come in person? Why is he asking us to go? He also refuses to tell us his identity. How precious must he be to make everyone listen to him? Well, the person hesitated. Shun Yu pulled Shang Junlin out. What is this? He wants to see us, not the other way around. If he doesn't come, then don't blame us for not wanting to see him. Hey, please wait. My master is from the LAN room. He wants to invite you over to. I said, if he wants to see us, then let him come. We don't have time to waste with him. Shun Yu did not like this person who made Brother Lin spend so much money, so he directly interrupted him. At this time, the door of a private room not far away opened. Two men in luxurious clothes walked out. One of them was just about to speak when he saw Shun Yu. Their eyes met. Shun Yu twitched the corner of his mouth. Unfortunately, the people who walked out were none other than King Yu and Shen Qingran. King Yu obviously did not expect to meet him here. He frowned. Why are you here? Genius 1 second. Remember this website, www.bk50. CC Literature Mobile Version Website, mbk50. CC. Chapter 263. Emperor Yu knew how sharp Shun Yu's mouth was, so he didn't want to argue with him here. He restrained his temper and said kindly, I didn't know the person in the private room was you, otherwise what? Emperor Yu stopped talking. Shen Qingran became more and more unhappy. He finally escaped from the imperial palace and found someone who appreciated him. However, before he could be happy, he found that Shun Yu, who he always disliked, was also here. He even became Emperor Yu's right-hand man and could participate in any of Emperor Yu's affairs. Shen Qingran was much more important than him. Shen Qingran was extremely dissatisfied. Unfortunately, the Prince of Yu sided with the other party. Even if the two of them met, he could only endure. This time, he finally won a round with great difficulty and made the Prince of Yu break his promise with Shun Yu to accompany him. Who would have thought that he would meet the other party at the auction house? But no matter how unhappy he was, he didn't dare to show it. At the beginning, he tried to make trouble for Shun Yu. Not only did he fail, but he was also severely taught a lesson. Even Emperor Yu, who had always been gentle to him, didn't stand on his side. From then on, he didn't dare to make trouble for Shun Yu easily. Shun Yu didn't want to waste more time with them, so he walked out with the man behind him. The servant next to him hesitated and wanted to stop him, but he was pulled by the hem of his clothes. Emperor Yu watched Shun Yu leave with the man. His eyes fell on Shun Yu's hand holding the strange man's hand. His eyes became gloomy and unclear. When the two figures disappeared, he said coldly, "Go and find out the identity of the man who appeared beside him." After that, he turned to the servant who was sent to find the man. "Take him away. Don't let him appear in front of me in the future." Yes. Emperor Yu left without looking at Shen Qingran. Shen Qingran was left behind. He gritted his teeth and followed. After walking out for a long time, Xunyu suddenly realized that he was still holding the man's wrist, and the man was pulled by him all the way. He let go of his hand. He didn't notice that the man looked at his hand with regret. You knows that person? Even though he knew that Xunyu was working for the King of Yu, Song Junlin was still dissatisfied with the King of Yu. Of course, he also saw Shen Qingran standing beside King Yu. Song Junlin only disliked this person. He would never forget how a Yu had suffered because of this person. He had disguised himself and appeared in Yuju. Other than finding Shen Yu, he also planned to get rid of King Yu and the others in one go. His men had already infiltrated Yuju. Before long, the results would be out. Before that, he had to get Shen Yu out of the picture. I know him. You don't have to worry about him. He's not important, Shen Yu said. It's very strange, Shen Yu thought to himself. In the past, he had always thought that he liked King Yu, so much so that he was willing to leave his hometown for him and plan everything for him. But all of a sudden, this thought in his heart faded away. He couldn't even understand why he seemed to have been possessed. Shen Yu and Song Junlin didn't have the mood to continue strolling around. They proposed to go back to the residence first. Song Junlin didn't ask much. He was a very calm person. After accompanying Shen Yu back to the residence, he went out. The next morning, Shen Yu found that he was sick. He didn't know if it was because of the cold wind or not. This was already a common occurrence for him. After instructing someone to call for a doctor, he fell into a deep sleep. Song Junlin came to look for Shen Yu. Before he got close, he heard the conversation of several maids in the corridor. Young master is sick again. It's only been a few days. Why is he sick again? Young master's body has always been like this. That person stood him up and even brought someone to show off. It was as if he was afraid that others wouldn't know. Our young master just doesn't like to go out. It's not like he doesn't know anything about the outside world. I heard that that person even brought someone to the auction house yesterday. Young master went out yesterday too. Could it be that he met that person? Young master's mood wasn't right when he came back yesterday. It's very likely that he met that person halfway. Young master did so much for that person and received such treatment. What do you think that person's new maid will do? She was favored and brought around all day long. And because of her, she even stood up for our young master. Song Junlin stood in the same place. He roughly pieced together the truth from these maids. Shen Yu was angered by the King of Yu yesterday and fell sick. It seemed that he had to speed up. Other things aside, Shen Yu's body couldn't afford to be delayed. Song Junlin contacted the people who came to Yuju with him and ordered them to act as soon as possible. He went to Shen Yu's room alone. The servants in the residence knew that Shen Yu had a good relationship with him, so they didn't stop him. After Song Junlin entered the room, he saw the young man lying on the bed with his eyes closed. His face was pale and his heart ached. "Have you called for a doctor?" he asked. The maid beside him quickly replied, "I've sent someone to invite him. I know an old doctor with great medical skills. Take my token and go to this place to find him." Song Junlin took out a jade tablet and gave it to the maid. He also told her a location. The maid took the jade tablet and didn't move at first. Song Junlin frowned and suppressed the anger in his heart. "Your young master is sick. What are you waiting for?" For some reason, the maid felt that young Master Lin was more dignified than the King of Yu at this moment. She subconsciously followed his orders. The maid held the jade tablet and thought, young master's illness has been going on for so long. Maybe the doctor recommended by young Master Lin can cure young master. After the maid left, Song Junlin walked to the bedside and sat down. He tucked the young man in. "Isn't it just the King of Yu? Is it worth it for you to fall sick from anger?" Song Junlin touched the young man's forehead. His hand was burning hot. Song Junlin covered the young man's forehead with a wet handkerchief and continued, "I don't know how you will react when you know my true identity." In the beginning, he used this identity to get close to Shen Yu for convenience. After getting close to him, Song Junlin became more cautious. He thought that he couldn't hide it forever. Otherwise, Yu would definitely be angry. But how could he tell her? Shang Junlin was in a difficult position. During this period of time, Shang Junlin found that Shen Yu trusted him a lot. This trust was beyond Shen Yu's limit for ordinary people. Otherwise, it was impossible for Shen Yu to not notice his little tricks. After understanding the power of Yuju, Shang Junlin found out what kind of power Shen Yu had in this place. The Ying Hua in Shen Yu's hand was like a big invisible net that covered this place. Shen Yu was the center of this big net. As long as he wanted, he could know everything that happened in every place. He also knew that Shen Yu had investigated his identity in the beginning. But he didn't do anything at that time, so Shen Yu couldn't find anything. If he investigated again now, he would definitely find something wrong. But after the first time, Shen Yu didn't investigate his background anymore. It was really unusual for Shen Yu to trust a stranger who had only known him for a few days. Shen Yu was in a daze because of the fever. He opened his eyes unconsciously. His vision was also blurry. He opened his mouth, but his voice was so weak that it was almost inaudible. "Who is it?" Shen Yu's hand reached out from the quilt. Shang Junlin held Shen Yu's hand and stuffed it back into the quilt. When he was about to withdraw, he found that Shen Yu held his hand back. Shang Junlin calmly held Shen Yu's hot hand and said gently, "It's me. The doctor will be here soon. Do you feel any discomfort?" "I'm cold," Shen Yu said in a daze. Shang Junlin looked at the several layers of quilts on the bed. He felt the heat in his hand and knew that it was a symptom caused by the fever. He pulled the quilt on the bed and wrapped Shen Yu more tightly. After thinking for a while, he turned over and got on the bed. He hugged Shen Yu and the quilt into his arms. "Do you feel better now?" The man's tone was too gentle. Under his soft coaxing, Shen Yu gradually fell asleep. Not long after, the doctor arrived. He was the doctor who often treated Shen Yu. When he saw the strange man in the room, he was stunned for a moment. However, he didn't ask too much. As a doctor, he didn't need to get involved in the master's affairs. He took Shen Yu's pulse and retreated to the side to write a prescription. "Has his body always been like this?" Shang Junlin walked to the doctor and asked. "Yes. After young Master Shen came to Yuju, I've been treating him. Unfortunately, I'm not good enough and can't find a cure. I can only relieve it temporarily. If this continues, young Master Shen's body won't be able to bear it sooner or later." The doctor already knew from the maid that the man was Shen Yu's good friend, so he said more. At this time, Dr. Wu followed the maid into the room. When he saw Shang Junlin, he bowed subconsciously but was stopped by the other party's gaze. "This is a doctor I know. I was worried about Yu, so I invited him here without permission." Shang Junlin explained to the doctor. He knew that some doctors didn't like this and didn't want to ruin Shen Yu's image in the doctor's heart. The doctor waved his hand quickly. "No need. It's good to have someone to take a look at young Master Shen. If young Master Shen is always like this, I don't feel good." Dr. Wu stepped forward and took Shen Yu's pulse. Before coming to Yuju, the emperor had already told him about the patient's condition. After taking his pulse, he found that the patient's condition was even worse. After knowing that the old doctor had been treating Shen Yu, Imperial Dr. Wu discussed the treatment with the other party. "I'll have to trouble the two doctors to stay here for the time being. After Yu is cured, I'll reward you greatly." Shang Junlin asked the two doctors to stay. When the medicine was served, Shang Junlin was about to ask how to feed Shen Yu when the maid came forward and woke him up in a low voice. Shen Yu really woke up. He took the bowl of medicine and drank it all. He didn't complain and his face didn't change at all. After drinking the medicine, Shen Yu was about to lie down when he saw the tall man walk over with something in his hand. Shang Junlin sat by the bed and opened his palm. There were a few candied fruits in his hand. He fed the candied fruits to Shen Yu. "Brother Lin." Shen Yu looked confused. Shang Junlin seemed helpless and asked gently, "Isn't the medicine bitter? Eat some candied fruits to ease the pain." Shen Yu opened his mouth slightly and the candied fruits were sent into his mouth. The sweetness dissolved the bitterness in his mouth. Looking at the man's obviously distressed expression, Shen Yu blinked and an indescribable feeling rose in his heart. It was sour and astringent, but there was also a sweetness that couldn't be ignored. Maybe it was because the man's gaze was too gentle, or maybe it was the illness that made people weak. At this moment, Shinyu felt that it would be great if Brother Lin could always be by his side. Since he was young, he had always been the one to face everything alone. He was the decision-maker and seemed so powerful that he could do anything. His opponents, his subordinates, the people he was loyal to, they all felt the same way. "What are you thinking about?" Shang Junlin asked when he saw him in a daze. "I'm thinking. It would be great if Brother Lin could always stay." Genius 1 second. Remember this website, www.bk50. CC Literature Mobile Version Reading Website, mbk50. cc. Chapter 264. Shang Junlin didn't know that Shinyu was thinking about how to make him stay. A maidservant came in with hot water. Shang Junlin took the hot water and soaked a handkerchief to wipe Shinyu's face. Shinyu slightly raised his head and let Shang Junlin do whatever he wanted. "Brother Lin, you are very good at taking care of people. Have you taken care of anyone before?" Shinyu asked. "I have only taken care of you." Shang Junlin thought. "In this world, besides you, who else deserves my personal care?" Shinyu's mouth curved up. No matter whether this was true or not, Brother Lin's words made him feel happy. After drinking the medicine, Shinyu was no longer unconscious. He learned from the maidservant that Brother Lin found a doctor for him. He said, "My body has always been like this. Brother Lin, you don't have to take it to heart. You took me in and treated me sincerely. I have to repay him." Shang Junlin held Shinyu's hand that was on the quilt and said seriously. The man's hand was very warm. Shinyu, who was disturbed by the cold, was reluctant to part with this warmth. He didn't withdraw his hand. Instead, he leaned back on the bed in this position. "Brother Lin, thank you for your trouble." Shinyu didn't refuse the man's kindness. In his heart, it was already a kind of recognition. After Imperial Physician Wu finished discussing with the old doctor, he came to check Shinyu's pulse again. He knew that this doctor was found by Brother Lin. Shinyu's attitude towards him was very good. In order to facilitate the treatment, Imperial Physician Wu temporarily stayed. Shang Junlin remembered Shinyu's recuperation prescription. After coaxing Shinyu to sleep, he met Imperial Physician Wu alone and memorized the prescription. Imperial Physician Wu made slight adjustments according to Shinyu's body. He wrote down a new prescription and handed it to Shang Junlin. "Don't say anything that shouldn't be said. You just need to take good care of him." Shang Junlin took the prescription and said lightly, "Don't worry, young master." When Imperial Dr. Wu saw it, he understood why His Majesty did this. Seeing that His Majesty was not interested in men and women, people in the court thought that His Majesty was going to die alone. They didn't expect that it was not that he was not interested, but that there was no one who was interested. Didn't they appear now? Even though he didn't know why His Majesty didn't directly bring him back to the palace and even disguised himself to freeload at the other party's house, this wasn't something that a mere imperial physician like him should be concerned about. After waking up, Shinyu felt a lot more comfortable. Just as he was about to call someone, he saw a tall man walking over with his clothes. "Lunch is ready. Do you want to eat something?" After sleeping for so long, Shinyu didn't want to continue lying down. He nodded and was about to sit up. Seeing this, Shang Junlin walked to the bed, put down the clothes, and reached out to help her up. "Put on your clothes first." After Shinyu changed his clothes, Shang Junlin put on a cloak for him. Shinyu glanced at it. This cloak. He didn't seem to wear it often. "What's wrong?" Shang Junlin lowered his head and fastened the belt at the young man's collar. The cloak was very thick and warm. Shinyu looked down at the cloak on his body. It was light blue and embroidered with dark patterns. There was a circle of fur around the collar. It was warm and fluffy, dispelling the coldness of the body. "Nothing. I like it very much." Suddenly, Shinyu didn't want to find out the origin of this cloak. Lunch was light, but there were many dishes. The aroma of the dishes made people's appetite faintly wet. Shang Junlin sat opposite Shinyu and put food in his bowl. Try this dish. It tastes good." He didn't know if it was a coincidence, but the dishes that the man put in Shen Yu's bowl were all to his taste. Unknowingly, he ate quite a lot. In the past, Shen Yu would lose his appetite at times like this. He would just eat a little. This was the first time that Shen Yu felt the beauty of food when he was sick. After lunch, Song Junlin accompanied Shen Yu to take a walk in the courtyard to digest the food. For the next period of time, Song Junlin basically stayed in the residence to accompany Shen Yu. If there was anything that needed to be done, he would choose to do it after Shen Yu fell asleep. He had already ordered the people in Yuju to speed up. King Yu's power hadn't fully developed yet. He planned to take this opportunity to completely eliminate King Yu and his people. King Yu didn't know that outside his fief, the imperial army was watching him like a tiger watching its prey. Song Junlin also sent people to sneak into King An's fief. He had already experienced the process of collecting evidence in the previous world. This time, it would only be easier. During the days of recuperation in the residence, Shen Yu and Song Junlin were together day and night. They were almost inseparable. Wherever Shen Yu appeared, the other person's figure would definitely be seen. Imperial physician Wu had to treat Shen Yu's body, so he spent more time with the two of them. Seeing His Majesty's attitude, he was amazed. Who would have thought that His Majesty, who was in love, would show such a side? Was this still the wise, decisive, and ruthless emperor of Da Huan? In the beginning, Imperial physician Wu was surprised by His Majesty's attitude towards Shen Yu several times a day. After a few days, no matter what His Majesty did, he was already used to it. They went in and out together, dressed, washed, ate, drank, and played together. Song Junlin couldn't wait to take care of everything around Shen Yu. Shen Yu didn't like servants to wait on him. With Song Junlin around, he didn't need these people to get close to him. In the afternoon, Shen Yu and Song Junlin were playing chess in the courtyard. "Brother Lin, how long do you plan to stay in Yuju?" After a game, Shen Yu spoke first. He knew that the man came to Yuju for business and might leave soon. In his heart, he wanted him to stay a little longer. Maybe he didn't realize it himself. During this period of time, the distance between him and Song Junlin had shortened infinitely. With his acquiescence, Song Junlin had invaded every aspect of his life and left traces in every place. There was also King Yu. After that day, he didn't know what King Yu would do. He had to make some preparations. He couldn't let Brother Lin be disturbed by King Yu. It shouldn't be too long. Song Junlin tilted his head to observe Shen Yu's expression. "After I leave, will you miss me?" This question was actually a bit out of line. When Song Junlin asked it, Shen Yu didn't feel that there was anything wrong with it. He thought about it seriously and said, maybe. Sure enough, he would leave. Shen Yu didn't have time to feel depressed. He heard the man ask, "If I say that I want to invite you to leave with me, will you leave with me? Why do you want to take me away?" Shen Yu held a black chess piece. His fingers unconsciously clenched. Da Huan is so big. Yuju is just one of the many places. There are so many other places. Doesn't you want to see them? Did Shen Yu want to? In fact, he didn't feel much about it. But if he had Brother Lin by his side, this matter would become attractive. If there's a chance, I can go and see them. Shen Yu's lips curled up slightly. Brother Lin was right. Da Huan was so big. There were so many places he could go. Why should he stay in Yuju? Shen Yu's side was peaceful, but King Yu's side wasn't so relaxed. After returning from the auction house, King Yu ordered people to investigate the background of the person beside Shen Yu. He didn't know why, but he was very concerned about that person's appearance. Yuju was his territory. It was easy for him to investigate a person. Not long after, his subordinates found out. That person was a merchant from another place. There was nothing special about him. If he had to say something, it might be that the goods he sold were relatively new. The only thing that King Yu cared about was that this person was currently living in Shen Yu's manor and had a close relationship with him. How can anyone casually covet my people? King Yu frowned unhappily. He originally wanted to do something to expel this person from his fief. But before he could do anything, his subordinates were in trouble. He had to deal with more important matters. But he didn't know what went wrong. Things that could be easily solved in the past couldn't be solved this time. It also caused a bigger problem. The other forces that had formed an alliance with him were also targeted. He also lost contact with the spies in the capital. A series of changes overwhelmed King Yu. After getting busy, Shun Qingran was naturally thrown to the back of his mind. Shun Qingran wanted to see him but was stopped outside the door. King Yu was so busy that he was in a terrible fix. How could he have the mood to deal with him? Tell me, what is going on? In the study, King Yu looked at his subordinates. Your Highness, you can't even solve such a small matter. Why do I keep you? King Yu was so angry that he couldn't listen to anyone else. His subordinates lowered their heads. They didn't dare to say anything that would offend King Yu. They also didn't know how things developed like this. Everything was done in secret. No one should have found out. If this matter couldn't be solved in time and was discovered by the imperial court, it would lead to a disaster. Where is Shen Yu? Why isn't he here? After looking around, King Yu finally found that one person was missing. Young Master Shen is on sick leave. That's why he didn't come. One of his subordinates explained. Go and invite him here. King Yu turned around and walked a few steps before stopping. No, I will go and invite him personally. The subordinates let out a sigh of relief. They knew Chen Yu's abilities very well. Ever since he came to Yuju, he had helped King Yu solve many troublesome problems. This time, with him here, he would be able to solve this problem perfectly. Shun Yu's illness dragged on for a few days. He didn't have a good foundation. Dr. Wu only gave him milder medicine. The medicine for recuperation would be used after he recovered. Under Shang Junlin's careful care, Shun Yu didn't have a bad time. In order to take care of him, Shang Junlin stayed in the room next to him. Every day before he went to sleep, he was the last person Shun Yu saw. When he woke up, he was also the first person he saw. At first, Shun Yu felt that he wouldn't be used to another person leaving too many traces in his life. Later, he found that he didn't resist men's approach at all. When he woke up one day, Shun Yu saw Shang Junlin sitting by the bed and reading a book as usual. Sensing movement, Shang Junlin turned around and looked at him. You're awake. Do you want to sleep a little longer? What time is it? Shun Yu sat up as he spoke. Another thing that made Shun Yu dumbfounded was that Shang Junlin always asked him to sleep a little longer in the morning. After a few days, Shun Yu woke up half an hour later than usual. It's still early. Shang Junlin tucked him in. You haven't recovered from the cold. Be careful not to catch a cold. Shun Yu was about to say something when the bedroom door was pushed open from the outside. He subconsciously looked outside. King Yu came early. He didn't expect that he would see such a scene. The young man who had been following him was pulling on the bed with a strange man in disheveled clothes. King Yu was so angry that he even forgot the purpose of his visit. He said coldly, Shun Yu, you don't leave the Fu all day just to hang out with this kind of person? Genius 1 second. Remember this website, www.bk50. CC Literature Mobile Version Website, mbk50. CC. Chapter 265. Ever since he came to the fief, King Yu had never been spoken to like this. He was so angry that he was speechless. At this time, the servant who was left behind by King Yu ran over in a panic. King Yu was already terrified that he couldn't stop him. Seeing this scene, he directly knelt down. Shun Yu knew that he couldn't blame the servant. King Yu's identity was not a secret in the manor. If he really wanted to do something, the servant wouldn't dare to stop him. You can leave first, Shun Yu said. The servant hurriedly retreated. With this interruption, King Yu was not so angry. He looked at the man standing beside the bed. From his memory, he remembered that it was the man he saw at the auction house. His eyes darkened. After not seeing Shun Yu for a few days, he couldn't help but be concerned about it now. Shun Yu was his possession. Of course, he wouldn't allow others to touch him. Who is this person? Shun Yu. King Yu looked away and looked at the young man who was wrapped in the quilt. This is my private matter. Your Highness doesn't need to worry about it. Shun Yu's tone was slightly cold. Your identity is special. Don't be deceived by some people with bad intentions. King Yu pointed out. Not as good as your highness. Blocking the door, are you afraid that the cold wind won't come in and worsen a Yu's condition? Shang Junlin ridiculed. King Yu also realized that something was wrong. He was a dignified king. What was he doing standing at the door? Your highness, please leave first. Seeing Brother Lin protecting him, Shen Yu's displeasure caused by King Yu's arrival gradually disappeared. It was strange. Since he got along with Brother Lin, he cared less about King Yu. He wouldn't be hurt by King Yu's actions like before. After calming down and thinking about it, he felt like he was possessed in the past. He had done so much for this person. Why am I the one going out and not him? King Yu pointed at Shang Junlin with an expression of disbelief. I'm going to help you dress and wash up. What are you doing here? Shang Junlin glanced at him indifferently. I am a prince, why would I do such a thing? Even if he had to do it, Shen Yu should be the one serving him. Then why are you staying? With his back facing Shen Yu, Shang Junlin did not hide his sarcasm. After learning about what had happened to Shen Yu from the hidden dragon guards, Shang Junlin regarded Prince Yu as a dead man. Nothing could compare to the fact that Prince Yu had used Shen Yu. This was enough to sentence Prince Yu to death. King Yu's eyes suddenly widened. He couldn't be mistaken. He saw a clear killing intent in this person's eyes. Then, he looked at Shen Yu. The young man's expression was calm, as if he didn't know what was happening in the dark. Killing intent. He was just a merchant. Why would he want to kill him? Was it because of Shen Yu? Or was there another reason? When he looked over again, there was only provocation in the other party's eyes. It was as if the killing intent he felt earlier was just his imagination. Why are you still standing here, Your Highness? Shang Junlin asked again. Being provoked by a merchant with no status again and again, King Yu had already thought of hundreds of ways to torture this person. However, he couldn't bring himself to stay here any longer. He flung his sleeves and left. Shang Junlin walked over and closed the door. When he returned, he saw that the young man was staring at him without blinking. Why are you looking at me like that? Brother Lin, aren't you afraid of offending him? Others might not know, but Shen Yu knew very well. King Yu seemed to be a tolerant person, but he was actually very calculative. Brother Lin had embarrassed him today, so he would definitely be targeted. What do I have to be afraid of? No matter how powerful he is only powerful in Yuju. Once he leaves Yuju, he can't reach out to the whole of Daeheng. Shang Junlin didn't care. Of course, he wasn't afraid. His men had already started to take action. Soon, King Yu would be in trouble. How would he have the time to find trouble with others? Even if he really wanted to find trouble with him, there was nothing to be afraid of. It would be a waste if he didn't take advantage of this opportunity. That's true. However, you are in Yuju now. He is the master of Yuju. It would be easy for him to deal with you. Brother Lin, are you really not worried? Don't you still have a Yu? Shang Junlin helped the young man put on his clothes. If I had nothing, I would have to beg a Yu to take me in. I am strong and can work. I can be a servant in the residence. With me around, I won't let you end up like this. Brother Lin is right. King Yu isn't the true master of Daeheng. It's not easy for him to hide the truth from the masses. Other things aside, as long as he did something, King Yu wouldn't be able to deal with Brother Lin. After all, to King Yu, compared to an insignificant merchant, his career was more important. As his most trusted subordinate, Shen Yu knew clearly what King Yu wanted to do. In the past, Shen Yu had walked the same path until the end. But now, he couldn't help but wonder if King Yu was really suitable for that position. Suppressing all kinds of thoughts, Shen Yu went to the study to see King Yu. King Yu came with a serious matter. Although he was sulking for a while, he didn't forget about it. After Shen Yu finished his greeting, he talked to him about it. The two talked in the study for more than 2 hours. After King Yu left, Shen Yu, who had been idle for a while, got busy again. After getting started, Shen Yu found that the things King Yu talked about were really tricky. Every step he took was at their pace. It was as if someone had leaked out every movement inside the residence. Shang Junlin found that Shun Yu was busy. He knew what Shun Yu was dealing with these days. Since Shun Yu took over, their progress had to slow down. Shang Junlin knew that Yu was extraordinary, but he was still surprised when he saw him. No wonder Shang Junyu could develop such a large-scale force in a short time. With Shun Yu's help, it was not surprising. Once again, he was busy until late at night. Shang Junlin brought hot food to the study. Seeing the young man's slightly haggard face, he felt distressed. Shun Yu was used to the company of a man in the middle of the night. He put down the pen and took a sip of the soup. Did anyone cause trouble to Brother Lin's shop? Shang Junlin shook his head. No. In fact, there were some who were dealt with by him. Those who wanted to attack him didn't dare to act casually. After instructing Shun Yu, King Yu kept an eye on the situation for a few days. Seeing that the chaos gradually calmed down, he was relieved. Now that the urgent matter was solved, he thought of the person who made him lose face several times. It was easy to deal with a businessman without any foundation in his fief. That man gave him a strong sense of threat. If he didn't deal with him, King Yu wouldn't be able to eat or sleep in peace. The only difficult thing was to not let this matter become a barrier between him and Shun Yu. King Yu summoned his confidants to discuss how to deal with this person. There were many confidants who didn't get along with Shun Yu, but they all knew that now was not the time for internal strife. Take this matter for example. If it wasn't for Shun Yu, they didn't know how long it would take to solve it. So at this stage, everyone didn't want Shun Yu and King Yu to be at odds. After the discussion, some people who were close to Shun Yu secretly remembered this matter and planned to find a chance to leak the news to Shun Yu. Shun Yu's influence in King Yu's power was far beyond everyone's imagination. Not long after, Shun Yu received the news. The news was brought by Jiang Huiqing. Jiang Huiqing had Ying Hua and was well informed. He had been working for Shun Yu outside. Some time ago, he left Yuju for a period of time according to Shun Yu's order. He just came back 2 days ago. After reporting what Shun Yu asked him to do, Jiang Huiqing mentioned the news he just received. What do you plan to do, young master? Shun Yu rubbed the teacup in his hand. I thought that he would at least not touch my people because I solved such a big problem for him. It seems that I thought too much. King Yu has always been like this. He doesn't allow anyone to slander him. What young Master Lin did really violated his taboo. King Yu wants to secretly get rid of young Master Lin. Jiang Huiqing had been with Shun Yu for many years. He knew better than others how King Yu treated Shun Yu. Therefore, he knew that King Yu was more possessive of Shun Yu than others. Jiang Huiqing already knew what young Master Lin did from others. Except for exclaiming that young Master Lin was bold, he felt that young Master Lin was more pleasing to the eye than King Yu. But what he did also violated my taboo. Shun Yu lowered his eyes and said in a light tone, since he has the time to care about these trivial matters, let him not continue to be idle. Let some of those things leak out. It's time for these people to see their situation clearly. Shun Yu was talking about how King Yu's forces in other places in Da Huan were targeted. Shun Yu had already dealt with some of them in advance. The news didn't reach King Yu's ears. These people who were holed up in Yuju didn't know that their situation was far more dangerous than they imagined. Yes. Jiang Huiqing could feel that Shun Yu was really angry this time. At the same time, he was more and more curious about young Master Lin. What kind of person was he that could make his master go against King Yu? King Yu has already given the order. Young Master Lin might be in danger. Does young master want to send people to protect him? Yes, send some people over. Shun Yu also knew that Yuju was King Yu's fief. His people were everywhere. Unless he could send Brother Lin out of Yuju in the shortest time possible, he might be in danger at any time. Furthermore, based on what had happened in Yuju during this period of time, Shun Yu had dealt with the other party for a long time. He could more or less guess that the other party was sent by the Imperial Court. Other than the Imperial Court, no other force could do such a thing. He had already sent someone to warn King Yu. Whether or not he would be taken seriously was not something he could control. Shang Junlin received a message from his subordinate. The message said that King Yu suddenly became difficult to deal with. Moreover, the other party seemed to have discovered their existence and was secretly searching for them. Shang Junlin read the secret letter and burned it. He knew that King Yu became difficult to deal with because Shen Yu made a move. After tidying up his clothes, Shang Junlin walked out of the door. As usual, he planned to go out and meet the people he brought. He didn't expect to be stopped at the door. "Young master, this." The servant who was arranged to serve Shang Junlin didn't know what was going on. Shang Junlin looked at the guards in front of him and said with a strange tone, "Your young master doesn't allow me to leave the residence." These two guards were also unfamiliar. Shang Junlin was sure that he had never seen them before today. One of them nodded, "Yes, young Master Lin, please don't leave for now." "Your young master didn't say the reason?" The guard shook his head, "Young Master Lin, please go back." Genius 1 second. Remember this website, www.bk50. CC Literature Mobile Version Reading Website, mbk50. CC. Chapter 266. Shen Yu thought that his behavior would make the man unhappy. He didn't expect that the man would say something like this when he saw him. He observed the man's face and couldn't find any displeasure. He was a little confused. "Brother Lin, you're not angry?" He didn't say why he was angry. Both of them knew very well. "You thought that I would be angry. Why did he do this?" How could Shang Junlin be angry because of this? As long as Shen Yu wanted, he was willing to do anything. However, he was more concerned about one thing. Did he imprison him in the mansion simply to protect him from King Yu, or did he find out something? With Shen Yu's intelligence, Shang Junlin didn't think that his behavior could be hidden from him. He didn't suspect him before because he trusted him for some unknown reason and didn't investigate carefully. Now that Shen Yu had fought with his men, it was inevitable that he would find some clues. Shen Yu looked at the man deeply. He seemed to want to say something. His lips moved, but he didn't say anything in the end. Shen Yu didn't know why he was hesitating. He didn't intend to imprison Brother Lin in the mansion. If it was just King Yu, he could just send someone to protect him. However, when he was dealing with those troubles, he found some clues that pointed to Brother Lin. Brother Lin was a businessman. How could he be involved in these things? Shen Yu didn't have time to think about it. He directly got rid of these traces. He didn't know what role Brother Lin played in this matter, but he knew that he didn't want Brother Lin to be killed by King Yu. "What does you want to say?" Seeing the change in the young man's expression, Shang Junlin's heart skipped a beat. It seemed that something was wrong. However, he wanted the young man to jump out of the mud pit of King Yu. It didn't matter if he found out. It would be convenient for his next action. "You offended King Yu before. Yuju is his fief. If you don't leave Yuju, you won't be safe outside. Just stay in the mansion for a while." Shen Yu had mixed feelings, but he didn't show it on his face. Shang Junlin had been paying attention to Shen Yu's expression. After hearing Shen Yu's words, he was unsure again. He suppressed all kinds of thoughts in his heart and said bluntly, "You wants to put me under house arrest? Brother Lin, didn't you just say that I'm hiding a mistress in a golden house?" "Let's take it that way then," Shen Yu said calmly as he put away the various thoughts in his mind. Of course, he knew that Brother Lin was joking, but he felt that this excuse was gentler than the naked truth. He did not tear open the truth when he just felt the warmth, so he would just treat it as him deceiving himself. Hearing this, Shang Junlin's eyes darkened. He took a few steps forward and approached Shen Yu. The distance between them was infinitely shortened, and the young man's thin body was shrouded under his body. "I'll take Yu's words seriously." The man's eyes were filled with strong emotions, and his voice was low and hoarse. For a moment, Shen Yu felt a strong sense of oppression, but it was only for a moment. In the blink of an eye, it dissipated without a trace. Shen Yu raised his eyes and stared at the man. The man's eyes seemed to be filled with stars, and it was very tempting. "You, do you know what this sentence means?" The man lowered his head and moved closer. His breath sprinkled on Shen Yu's exposed skin, causing him to tremble. "I." Shen Yu calmed down. "Brother Lin's appearance really makes people want to hide a mistress. It's a pity that my mansion is not a golden house, so I'll have to trouble Brother Lin to condescend. Do you like my current face?" Catching the strange expression on the man's face, Shen Yu was puzzled. Why, then do you like Prince Yu's face? Shang Junlin asked again. Shen Yu was even more puzzled. Does Brother Lin care about this? How could Shang Junlin not care? He appeared in front of Shen Yu in a disguise. His current face was very different from his original appearance. He had never thought about what to do if Shen Yu liked his current face more. Young master, someone outside the mansion wants to see you. The appearance of the servant broke the deadlock between the two. Shen Yu pushed the man. I'll deal with other things first. Shang Junlin let go of him. He was still thinking about the problem just now. Once again, he felt that it would be better to deal with Prince Yu's matter as soon as possible. He just didn't know if Yu would be angry after knowing the truth. The person who came to see Shen Yu was one of Prince Yu's confidants. He worked for Prince Yu before Shen Yu. Before Shen Yu came, he was very important. After Shen Yu appeared, Prince Yu didn't use him as much as before. Therefore, he had been very dissatisfied with Shen Yu. This time, he came here because he knew that the people around Shen Yu had offended Prince Yu, so he came to look for trouble. We are supposed to share Prince Yu's worries. You've worked for Prince Yu for so long. How can you not understand this? I think, since Prince Yu didn't say anything, it's not up to you to interfere in this matter, right? Shen Yu didn't give a good face to this person. I will deal with my people. I don't need you to say anything. If there is no other business, I have a lot of business to deal with recently. Forgive me, I don't have so much free time to waste here. The person who came wanted to find trouble with Shen Yu. As a result, he was so angry that he fell on his back. He regarded Shen Yu as a competitor, but he didn't know that Shen Yu didn't put him in his eyes at all. Servants couldn't hide secrets. In less than a morning, everyone in the mansion knew about what happened in the morning. Young master, have you thought it through? You don't want Prince Yu anymore and want young Master Lin? What's so good about Prince Yu? He's not as handsome or considerate as young Master Lin. If young master really wants to be with someone, he should be with someone like young Master Lin. Yes, but young master's behavior is really unexpected. What did young Master Lin do to make young Master Lin unhappy? Now he doesn't even let people out of the mansion. It's better for us not to guess too much about the master's affairs. Today, when I was serving in the hall, I heard that the person beside Prince Yu came to find trouble with young Master Lin. Young Master Lin said that young Master Lin is his person. Maybe it won't be long before there will be a happy occasion in the mansion. The words of the servants' discussion reached Shang Junlin's ears and also reached Imperial Physician Wu's ears. After Imperial Physician Wu knew, his admiration for Shen Yu deepened. In this world, there was only one person who dared to imprison His Majesty and come out unscathed. Shang Junlin's people couldn't go out of the mansion, but he didn't stop what he ordered. Prince Yu still encountered trouble from time to time. These troubles were not a big deal, but when they spread to a certain extent, it was enough to destroy Prince Yu's many years of operation. Shen Yu was still busy and spent more time away from the mansion. Shang Junlin felt distressed and felt that it couldn't go on like this. Yu was already sick, but he still had to drag his sick body to work for Prince Yu. No matter how he thought about it, he felt that Prince Yu wasn't worth it. Imperial Physician Wu would take Shen Yu's pulse every day. After taking the medicine prescribed by Imperial Physician Wu, Shen Yu could feel that his body was getting better. So, he hired Imperial Physician Wu to stay and nurse his body with a large sum of money. Shen Yu raised the flowers brought back from the auction house in his room. Under the careful care of Shen Yu, they grew well and became one of Shen Yu's favorite flowers. In the carriage, Shen Yu was telling Jiang Huiqing what to do next. Suddenly, he felt dizzy, followed by severe pain, as if a blunt knife was cutting his nerves. Shen Yu clenched his teeth to stop himself from groaning. Jiang Huiqing immediately found that something was wrong. He stopped talking and supported the young man who almost fell. "Young master, are you okay?" Shen Yu put one hand on Jiang Huiqing's arm. Blue veins stood out on the back of his hand. Just as he was about to speak, he felt a bloody taste in his throat. "Young master," in Jiang Huiqing's anxious voice, Shen Yu's vision turned black and he fainted. Jiang Huiqing knew that his young master's health was not good. It was common for him to have an attack. He supported the young man and took out a handkerchief to wipe the blood from the young man's lips. Then, he ordered the coachman to return to the mansion immediately. Shang Junlin was waiting for Shunyu to come back. Since he was imprisoned in the mansion, he had less and less time to see Shunyu. The young man left early and returned late. If he didn't see him when he came back, he might not see him for several days. The carriage did not stop outside the gate. Instead, it went all the way to the mansion. Shang Junlin realized that something was wrong. So, he walked over and asked, "What happened?" "Young master fainted." Jiang Huiqing knew that Shunyu was special to him. So, he did not hide it. How did he faint? Shang Junlin did not care about anything else. He got on the carriage and carried the young man out. "Go and call Dr. Wu." Jiang Huiqing stood aside and watched the man carry Shunyu into the house. Then, he called the doctor. It was as if he was the master of the mansion. He could not intervene at all. At this time, Dr. Wu was still awake. When he heard the maidservant that Shunyu had fainted, he hurried over. Shunyu had already been placed on the bed by Shang Junlin, and his blood-stained clothes had been taken off and placed to the side. Even though he was unconscious, the young man still frowned, and beads of sweat seeped out of his forehead, indicating that his master was in great pain. Dr. Wu didn't say anything. He stepped forward and checked Shunyu's pulse. As time passed, Dr. Wu also frowned. "Who did young Master Shun meet today? What kind of food did he eat? What's different about you? Tell me everything in detail." Jiang Huiqing has been following Shunyu. So, he carefully recalled everything that happened today. Everything else was the same as usual. But today, in Prince Yu's mansion, young Master Shun asked if he had changed the incense. Is young Master Shun's illness caused by this incense? It is reasonable to say that young Master Shun has been recuperating with my prescription. So, he shouldn't be like this. Just now, when I checked his pulse, I found something that triggered his illness. Dr. Wu explained. "I will check it out." Jiang Huiqing's face became very ugly. He calmed down and said to Dr. Wu, "Young Master Shun, please. I will do my best." Imperial Dr. Wu came here to treat Shunyu, so naturally, he wouldn't be careless. He thought for a moment and continued, "If possible, I hope this young master can bring that incense for me to take a look, so that I can know whether young Master Shun's illness has anything to do with it." "I know." Jiang Huiqing did not stay for long and left. As he said, he needed to check whether the illness was an accident or deliberately caused by someone. He also needed to find out the origin of the incense. Compared to Prince Yu, he certainly cared more about Shunyu. Dr. Wu went to write a prescription. Shang Junlin sat by the bed and held Shunyu's hand that was outside the quilt. He felt distressed. Shunyu had fallen ill twice in such a short time. The flesh that he had painstakingly gained was gone. His wrist was so thin that it could be easily wrapped around. After writing a prescription, Shang Junlin sent someone to buy the medicine. After the medicine was bought, Dr. Wu personally decocted it and brought it in. "We have to find a way to make young Master Shun drink it." Shang Junlin had been holding Shunyu's hand. Once he let go, the young man would unconsciously clench his fist. His fingernails would sink into his flesh, leaving bloody marks. "Leave the medicine. I will feed it to him. You can leave first." Shang Junlin looked at Shunyu without turning back. "Yes." Dr. Wu put down the bowl of medicine and left. Shang Junlin wrapped Shunyu with the quilt and supported him to sit on his body. He picked up the medicine, scooped a spoonful, and blew on it until it was not hot. Then, he fed it to Shunyu's mouth. "It won't hurt anymore after you drink the medicine." Shunyu was unconscious, so naturally, he could not hear what Shang Junlin said. Shang Junlin pursed his lips and clenched his teeth. He tried several times, but he could not feed him. Shang Junlin put down the bowl of medicine and pinched Shunyu's face. "Why don't you take care of your body? You are already in this state, yet you still work for the king of Yu. Is he that good?" Shunyu opened his eyes in a daze. The touch on his face had not disappeared. He looked around and was a little confused. "Brother Lin? I am." Shang Junlin did not expect that Shunyu would wake up at such a coincidental time. He brought the bowl of medicine. "You fainted in the carriage. Drink the medicine first." Brother Lin, what were you saying just now? Shen Yu vaguely remembered hearing a man's voice when he just woke up. Genius 1 second. Remember this website, www.bk50. CC Literature Mobile Version Website, mbk50. CC. Chapter 267. Why do you suddenly mention this? Shen Yu squinted his eyes and looked at Shang Junlin. Dr. Wu said that a Yu's body is not suitable to work so hard. If he wants to get better, he needs to rest for a while. Shang Junlin raised his hand and brushed Shen Yu's long hair behind his ear. Because he just woke up, the young man's long black hair was draped behind his back. His face was pale as if it will break at any time. Shen Yu looked at the young man without blinking his eyes and smiled. Just because of this. Shang Junlin's facial expression remained unchanged. Do you know why you got sick this time? My body has always been weak. Every year, I get sick a few times. Is it because of someone? Shang Junlin didn't answer, but his facial expression showed everything. Shen Yu sat up straight. His mind was getting clearer and clearer. His facial expression gradually became dignified. As he said, his body has always been weak. So, he never suspected that his illness was deliberately caused by someone. If that was the case, then his weak body will become a weapon for someone to control him. I want to see Dr. Wu. Shang Junlin had no objection. The sooner Shen Yu knew about this matter, the better. He was still thinking about how to persuade Shen Yu to go with him to the Ji family. But now, he had a good reason. Not long after, Imperial Dr. Wu was brought in by a servant. He reported his findings to Shen Yu. Shen Yu listened without saying a word. His facial expression did not change because of this sudden news. However, Shang Junlin could feel the anger in his body. It was better if Shen Yu did not know about this matter. But once he knew about it, he will definitely catch the person who tried to control him. As long as he was suspicious, some clues that were usually ignored will be found again. Shen Yu was a very active person. So, he will not just sit and wait for death. His Ying Hua has developed to a very large scale. Moreover, Shang Junlin asked the hidden dragon guards to give him the information they found. So, some secrets that were deliberately hidden can no longer be hidden. Shen Yu found a person called Zhu Wang. He found out what he said to Prince Yu. He also found out why Prince Yu deliberately approached him. Jiang Huiqing also found out the origin of the incense. The incense in the manor was sent by one of His Highness's aides. This aide is very mysterious. No one knows where he came from. His Highness is also very secretive about his existence. If it weren't for this incident, I'm afraid we wouldn't have discovered that there was such a person behind His Highness. Jiang Huiqing reported the information he had found. Shen Yu rubbed the wall of the cup. His eyes were obscure. Does Wang Ye know the use of the incense? Shen Yu remembered that he had smelled the incense more than once in the Wangfu. Without exception, he would fall ill. But when he recovered, he would subconsciously ignore this matter and think that he was just sick. How could he ignore such a big matter? Besides this matter, was there anything else that was done to his body? Did Prince Yu do it on purpose or not? Questions filled his mind one after another. Some kind of barrier began to loosen. Shen Yu did not realize this. He was thinking that it was not important whether Prince Yu knew about it or not. No matter whether he knew about it or not, what happened to him could not be faked. Shen Yu also thought of the man who suddenly appeared beside him. All the changes started from this person's appearance. Did he know something? For what purpose did he do all this? I want to know what happened in the Wangfu when I first came to Yuju. Also, Brother Lin, go and investigate his background. Shen Yu's suspicions had increased to 10. At this time, he no longer thought that Brother Lin was just an ordinary businessman. The time he came to Yuju was the time when Prince Yu's power was damaged. If he did not think deeply, he would not have realized it. But after thinking deeply, there were flaws everywhere. Wang Ye should not know about it. From the information that I have gathered these days, at least Wang Ye did not know that the incense would cause you to fall ill. Young master, what should we do next? With Ying Hua, Shin Yu was very clear about the turmoil in the outside world. It was obvious that the imperial court was determined to do something to Prince Yu. If it was in the past, Shin Yu would have solved this matter for Prince Yu without hesitation. But now he hesitated. Let's put aside the outside world first. Before I give the order, tell them not to confront the imperial court. Prince Yu should have some unknown power behind him. This is the right time. It's time to let them come out and meet us. Shin Yu always knew that other than them, there was someone else behind Prince Yu. But this power was hidden too well. Even Prince Yu did not know their real background. Shin Yu had never dealt with them before. He did not know the specific scale of this power. Tell others that I am sick and will not see any guests during this time. Since he found out that something was wrong, Shin Yu must get to the bottom of this matter. Shang Junlin still could not leave the mansion. Before, Shin Yu was worried that Prince Yu would do something to him. But now Shin Yu was not so worried about Prince Yu. But he had doubts about him. He could not tell what he was feeling. After Jiang Huiqing left, Shin Yu sat alone in the study for a long time. He had felt that Brother Lin was special to him. He even had the idea of keeping Brother Lin forever. If Brother Lin was just an ordinary businessman, he would not be involved in these disputes. And he would not be like Prince Yu, who approached him with a purpose. When they were together, Shin Yu did not show any abnormality. They were still close. Even under Shin Yu's intention, they looked closer than before. In the evening, Shin Yu washed up and came out with water vapor. Shang Junlin was sitting in his room reading a book. Shin Yu asked the maid to invite him. Shin Yu looked at Brother Lin's side profile. No matter what purpose he had for approaching him, since he had bumped into him, he could not blame him for not letting him go. A person who had touched his heartstrings, even if he had bad intentions, he could only deal with him personally. You, why did you call me over so late at night? Is there something important? Hearing the noise, Shang Junlin put down his book and looked over. The young man had just taken a bath. His face was still red from the steam. Under the candlelight, his black hair and snow-white skin looked even more gentle and charming. Brother Lin, didn't you say that you would take care of me? How about taking care of me personally? Shin Yu raised his eyebrows slightly. No matter how good a person was at disguising, it was impossible to disguise perfectly all the time. It would be easier to find flaws if he kept Brother Lin by his side. Shin Yu admitted that he had done it on purpose. He thought viciously. Was Brother Lin really close to him or was he pretending? If it was the latter, then he would let the illusion be true forever. Shang Junlin never thought that Shin Yu would say such a thing. He knew that with Shin Yu's ability, when he started to suspect Prince Yu, he would definitely not be able to escape. And once the seed of suspicion was planted, he would definitely be discovered. After all, he wasn't a real businessman. His fake identity couldn't stand up to repeated scrutiny. What's wrong? Brother Lin, are you unwilling? No, I'm extremely happy to take care of you personally. Shin Yu nodded, seemingly satisfied with his answer. He walked to the bedside and sat down. Shang Junlin consciously took out a dry handkerchief to dry his hair. Dry your hair before sleeping. Otherwise, you will have a headache. The man's movements were skillful and his strength was just right. Shin Yu slightly closed his eyes. He couldn't help but wonder why the other party's movements were so skillful. Before meeting him, who had he taken care of in the same way? He thought that he would not care about this, but the truth was not so. After drying his hair, Shin Yu sat at the table and ordered the maid to bring the chess. Play a game with me. Shang Junlin put the handkerchief aside and sat opposite Shin Yu. The maid quickly brought the chessboard. Shin Yu played the black pieces. This time, he did not hold back. Shang Junlin was familiar with Shin Yu's chess style. He also knew that the other party's strength could not be underestimated. Under the other party's pressure, he had to show his true strength. Shin Yu did it deliberately. He wanted to use this game to force the man's true strength. Only when the other party showed his true strength could he infer the other party's true character. For people like him, there were too many things that could be seen through a game of chess. The two played back and forth, reversing the game again and again. The white pieces were surrounded by the black pieces. In the adversity, the The white pieces fought back and the black pieces retreated. It seemed that they were at a disadvantage, but they could always make a comeback at the last moment. 2 hours passed, but there was no clear winner. Shun Yu had not played chess so freely for a long time. In the end, he almost forgot his original intention and was immersed in the game. His mind was full of the chess game. When it ended, it was already late at night. Shun Yu was not sleepy at all. He was also sure that the person playing chess with him could not be an ordinary businessman. That decisive style of chess was not something that an ordinary person could have. He just did not know what the other party's identity was in the imperial court. It's late at night. Brother Lin, you can sleep here. You said that you would take care of me, so naturally, you can't be too far away from me. Shun Yu ordered someone to bring a soft bed over. Although he found out that the man might be someone sent by the imperial court, Shun Yu was in a good mood. Imperial physician Wu had always thought that there would be nothing that could shock him again until he saw with his own eyes that the most powerful emperor in Dahuan personally took care of Shun Yu's food and daily life like a manservant. He almost suspected that His Majesty had been poisoned by a venomous insect. He found an opportunity to take His Majesty's pulse before he breathed a sigh of relief. However, before he could relax completely, he became anxious again. His Majesty was not affected by external forces, which meant that His Majesty was sincere. As the ruler of a country, would nothing happen in the future? No one knew about Imperial Physician Wu's worries. Shun Yu had been living well during this time. Even if the news from the King of Yu was not good, it did not affect his good mood. Every day, he went in and out with Shang Junlin. He could feel that the other party's closeness to him was sincere. Since this was confirmed, some things should be made clear. Thunder rumbled, and it started to rain heavily outside. Shang Junlin put away his umbrella and walked into the house. He had not shown himself for a long time. He had just thought of a way to go out and meet the people he brought with him. The deployment of the King of Yu was almost done. It was time to close the net. As soon as he entered the house, Shang Junlin felt that something was wrong. His heart sank. He walked into the inner room and saw a young man in blue sitting by the window. He was playing with an unopened secret letter in his hand. Hearing the footsteps, Shun Yu looked up. "You went to meet the people from the imperial court?" Sure enough, he couldn't hide it for long. Shang Junlin sighed in his heart. "A Yu found out. Then, how does a Yu plan to deal with me?" Genius 1 second. Remember this website, www.bk50. CC Literature Mobile Version Reading Website, mbk50. CC. Chapter 268. Shun Yu felt an aura from this man that a businessman would never have. He raised his head and looked into the man's eyes. His eyes were filled with vigilance. "What if I say that I will? You don't have to look at me like that. Even if you want to hand me over, I won't do anything to you." Shang Junlin raised his hand and touched the young man's cheek. He naturally couldn't bear to hurt Shun Yu, but he had no scruples when it came to King Yu. Shun Yu stared at the man for a while and suddenly smiled. "If I wanted to hand you over, why would I keep you trapped in the mansion?" As long as Shun Yu didn't care, with King Yu's personality, he wouldn't let him go easily no matter what the man's real identity was. Yuju was King Yu's territory. It was easy for him to make everyone in this place disappear. "I knew that a Yu wouldn't do that. A Yu kept me in the mansion to protect me, right?" Shang Junlin's movements were gentle. His hot breath sprinkled on the young man's face and successfully dyed his fair skin red. When he knew that Shun Yu was protecting him, Shang Junlin's feelings were indescribable. Therefore, he sped up his plan to deal with King Yu and revealed a flaw to let Shun Yu find out that something was wrong. If he wanted to pull Shun Yu to his side, he couldn't always maintain his identity as a businessman. Shun Yu's eyes flashed when his thoughts were exposed. Soon, he thought of something and asked, "Did you let me find out on purpose?" He came here today because the man's servant told him that the man was looking for him. When he arrived, he didn't see the man. He only saw a secret letter on the table. Shun Yu didn't open the letter. It wasn't that he didn't expect this. Before the man came back, he had been thinking about how to deal with this matter. In his heart, He didn't want a third person to know about this. He also never thought of telling King Yu about it. Before she could come up with an appropriate solution, the man came back. When she saw him, Shen Yu was displeased that she had been deceived. She questioned him without thinking. Feeling the constant warmth from the man's body, Shen Yu suddenly realized that the two of them were too close to each other. He didn't like this position where he was at a disadvantage, so he skillfully pressed the man against the wall. You felt that you couldn't hide it any longer, so you deliberately let me find out? Shen Yu's tone gradually turned cold. Brother Lin, no, since you used a fake identity to approach me, this name must also be fake. What, is it fun to play with me? Shen Yu's arm was pressed against the man's chest. Her eyes were burning. When she thought that their interactions these days were all intentional, Shen Yu's heart was extremely irritated. Except for this identity, I have never played tricks on you, you. Shang Junlin held Shen Yu's hand and placed it on his chest. This heart has never deceived you. Badump, the heartbeat under his palm was steady and powerful. Shen Yu knew that what the man said was true. Otherwise, what awaited the man today would not be such a simple confrontation. His treatment would not be good enough to eat, drink, and live in the mansion. You didn't approach me to deal with Prince Yu? Shen Yu lowered her eyes and asked. Why would a Yu think that Prince Yu is worth it? I approached a Yu only because of a Yu. There is no other reason. This was very important. Shang Junlin didn't want Shen Yu to misunderstand. Is the Imperial Court planning to take action against Prince Yu now? Yes, and the Imperial Court is determined to win this time. Shang Junlin spoke bluntly. Why would the Imperial Court suddenly want to take action against Prince Yu? In fact, Shen Yu could more or less guess that the Imperial Court was aware of Prince Yu's movements. The current emperor didn't have any brotherly affection for his brothers. Since Prince Yu threatened him, he certainly wouldn't sit still and wait for death. Shang Junlin, because his hands are stretched too far. Shen Yu, did you know my identity long ago? Shang Junlin, I did know your identity, but this has nothing to do with me approaching you. I wanted to approach you only because you are Shen Yu. Shen Yu, didn't you want to deal with Prince Yu through me? Shang Junlin shook his head. He pointed at the secret letter that Shen Yu casually placed on the table. You doesn't want to see the contents inside. Shen Yu raised his eyebrows. You want to surrender to me? Since he wanted to show it to him, Shen Yu naturally wouldn't let go of this opportunity. He let go of the man, walked to the table, and opened the secret letter. The more he read, the lower the pressure around Shen Yu's body became. This secret letter was full of things that Prince Yu had done. Everything he did stepped on Shen Yu's bottom line. Some of them even passed through Shen Yu's hands. But at that time, Shen Yu seemed to have no bottom line. As long as Prince Yu ordered him to do it, he would do it, even if it was against his original intention. Shang Junlin walked behind Shen Yu and pressed his hands on the table, trapping him between himself and the table. Does a Yu really think that such a person who would do anything to achieve his goals is suitable to sit on the throne? Shen Yu's fingers unconsciously tightened. Of course, he knew that a person who didn't care about the lives of the people was not suitable to be the emperor. Prince Yu sacrificed countless people for a little benefit today. Who could guarantee that when he sat on the throne, what would he do? The former emperor of Da Huan was like this. If the current emperor didn't turn the tide, who knows what would happen to Da Huan now? I admit that Prince Yu is not suitable for that position. Shen Yu turned around and looked at the man with a faint smile. So, is this your real purpose? Prince Yu is destined to lose. Why should a Yu sacrifice himself for such a person? Moreover, does a Yu really not mind at all what Prince Yu did? For example, in order to ensure your obedience, he gave you a hint. What do you mean by this sentence? A Yu should have noticed that something is wrong. Shang Junlin picked up a strand of hair that fell on the young man's chest and played with it in his hand. A Yu, think carefully. Where did your loyalty to Prince Yu come from? As the legitimate son of Zhenbei Hu, why did you give up everything in the capital and come all the way to Prince Yu's fief to serve him? Shen Yu thought for a while and realized that he really couldn't find the reason. His face became uglier and uglier. One of the things that Shen Yu hated the most in his life was being controlled by others. He thought that everything he did was out of his own free will. In the end, he realized that this was just his imagination. It was just like how he gradually realized that there was something wrong with his understanding of Prince Yu's feelings after he met Brother Lin. Shun Yu thought of the incense in Prince Yu's residence that induced his illness. He didn't believe that Prince Yu was not involved from the beginning to the end. At this time, Shun Yu couldn't care less about the man's background and purpose. He had to figure out what happened to him first. Shang Junlin left hurriedly. He stood there and watched the young man's back as he left. When he couldn't be seen, he knocked on the table. A hidden dragon guard silently appeared in the room. Send the captured people to Yu's men. Remember, don't leave any traces of your involvement. Yes. After Shun Yu went back, the first thing he did was to summon a few people in charge of Yinghua and ask them to investigate. As for Prince Yu, he didn't reveal any flaws for the time being. If they found out that it was really done by someone, he would definitely make the person who was involved pay the price. Yinghua acted quickly. With the help of the hidden dragon guards who secretly passed on clues, they received news not long after. There were some things that, unless they weren't done, would definitely leave traces once they were done. Shun Yu knew that Shen Yang had appeared in Prince Yu's fief. Yinghua also captured a few people. These people revealed a shocking secret. It turned out that his serious illness when he first came to Yuju was not an accident. It was caused by someone who gave him a hint. The room was silent. No one expected that they would find out such a secret. Shun Yu sat in the main seat, the expression on his face was unclear, and the silence spread. The subordinates sitting below all knew that this time, their master was really angry. Didn't you find out the people from the imperial court? Send them a message. Tell them that I want to meet their person in charge. I believe that they will be very interested in Prince Yu's power. Shun Yu's tone was very calm. Only he knew how angry he was. Part of it was towards Prince Yu. The rest was towards himself. He always thought that he was smarter than others. He didn't expect that he had been plotted against for so long and still didn't realize it. Fix. Will. Good. Return. Report. You. After that day, Shun Yu removed the restriction on the man. He knew that the man had the ability to protect himself. Shun Yu felt that he didn't need to do anything else. Although the man also lied to him, Shun Yu still wouldn't know that someone had done something to him if it wasn't for him. Counting the days, Shun Yu hadn't seen him for several days. No matter what happened before, Shun Yu felt that he should thank him for this matter. When he went to find him, the servant said that young Master Lin had left for several days. Shun Yu stood at the door for a while and turned to leave. The imperial court replied quickly. Shun Yu got on the carriage and went to the appointed place to meet the man. Under the pressure of the imperial court, Prince Yu's power was constantly shrinking. Except for the part that Shun Yu was in charge of, the other forces were greatly affected. Prince Yu wanted to meet Shun Yu several times, but he found excuses to avoid it. Prince Yu didn't dare to make Shun Yu unhappy at this juncture, so he could only follow his wishes. The appointed place to meet the man from the imperial court was a restaurant. Shun Yu got off the carriage and found that he had been here with Brother Lin. Thinking that he didn't know where Brother Lin went, Shun Yu frowned. Jiang Huiqing followed him into the restaurant. The guard waiting at the door led them to a private room on the second floor. Our lord only wants to see young Master Shun. Shun Yu nodded to Jiang Huiqing indiscernibly. Jiang Huiqing and the guard left together. Looking at the place where he had been before, Shun Yu felt a surge of complex emotions. Pushing the door open, Shun Yu saw a man in black standing by the window with his back to them. Hearing the sound, the man turned around. Young Master Shun, please come in. The man was wearing a black mask, covering the upper half of his face, revealing a sharp jaw and thin lips. Shun Yu stared at the man's face for a while, feeling that he was a little familiar. After sitting down, the servant waiting at the side poured tea for them. Shun Yu held the teacup and glanced at the man from time to time. This man gave him a very familiar feeling. Young Master Shun, why do you keep looking at me? The man asked in a low voice. I just feel that you are a little familiar. Shun Yu's only request when meeting with the imperial courts people was to meet the person who had the most authority. Why are you wearing a mask? To reduce some trouble. Young Master Shun, are you curious? The man put down the teacup and looked at the young man. Today Shun Yu was wearing an indigo robe, which made his skin look fairer. His temperament was very different from the light clothes he usually wore. His whole person looked sharper. I'm not curious. It's just that I sincerely invite you, but you don't seem to be sincere enough. The man was right. Shun Yu was curious. He was curious about why he suddenly had a good impression of the man when he saw him. He was also curious about why he felt that the man was familiar. If it was in the past, he would not be so curious. As long as he achieved his goal, it had nothing to do with him. Shun Yu himself did not know why he cared so much. Shun Yu seemed to see the man smile, and then he saw the man slowly relax. The man's face was a little similar to King Yu's. But compared to King Yu, the man was more handsome, and the aura around him was stronger. With such an appearance, and on behalf of the imperial court, needless to say, Shun Yu could guess the man's identity. The king of Great Huan, Shong Junlin. Why did he appear here? Now, is our sincerity enough? Shong Junlin chuckled and put the mask back on. Genius. 1 second. Remember this website, www.bk50. CC Literature Mobile Version Reading Website, mbk50. CC. Chapter 269. No matter how calm Shun Yu's mind was, he couldn't help but feel strange at this moment. He didn't expect that the person who appeared in front of him would be the revered emperor of Da Huan. Shun Yu's understanding of this person came from the King of Yu. It wasn't hard to imagine what he had heard from the King of Yu. Now that he had met him, he felt that many things could only be taken seriously by his own eyes and ears. Shun Yu raised his wine glass and toasted Shong Junlin with mixed feelings. Since you came here personally, we can naturally feel your sincerity. Surprised by the other party's identity, Shun Yu completely ignored the familiar feeling that surged in his heart when he saw the man. He pulled his mind back to the business. Let's eat first. There are a few dishes in this restaurant that are not bad. Shong Junlin clinked his glass with the young man and drank the wine in his glass. The wine was mellow. The dishes were ordered by Shong Junlin, who arrived first. He didn't seem to be in a hurry. He didn't talk about business at all during the meal. Shun Yu wasn't in the mood to eat. He was thinking about the purpose of the man's visit. If it was only to deal with the King of Yu, Shun Yu felt that it was worth it for the man to come here personally. Then, other than the King of Yu, what else in Yuju was worth this young man's personal visit? Shun Yu thought about the matters in Yuju carefully. He couldn't find anything strange. While he was thinking, there was an extra piece of fish in his bowl. It had no bones. Shun Yu paused for a moment and looked up. The man in black was looking at him with a smile. He didn't feel that his behavior was inappropriate. Sir, you don't have to do this. Shun Yu lowered his head and looked at the fish in his bowl. The fish in this restaurant is different from the ones in the capital. I like it very much. Young Master Shun, please try it. Shong Junlin said lightly. Shun Yu slowly put the fish into his mouth. The fish was delicious. After he finished the fish in his bowl, a shadow suddenly appeared in front of him. Before Shun Yu could react, there was an extra dish in his bowl. After that, whenever Shun Yu was about to finish eating, there would be one more dish in his bowl. The strange feeling in Shun Yu's heart became even stronger. It was one thing for the dignified emperor to personally come to see him, but why did he have to take on the responsibility of serving him food? After finishing the meal with complicated feelings, Shun Yu and Shong Junlin talked about business. After knowing that everything was premeditated, Shun Yu could no longer work for the Prince of Yu without any grudges like before. King Yu's hand has stretched too far. He covets what he shouldn't covet, so he has to pay the price. What do you think, young Master Shun? Shun Yu felt that there was a hidden meaning in his words, so he said, Da Huan has another master. The King of Yu is ambitious, but he doesn't have the ability to match it. If he really succeeds, it will be a disaster for the people of Da Huan. What about young Master Shun? Shang Junlin put down his wine glass. What does young Master Shen think? I am willing to contribute to the imperial court. In order to show his sincerity, Shen Yu brought a lot of information about the King of Yu. In these years, he worked for the King of Yu, so he knew more about the King of Yu's power than the imperial court. Then, Shen Yu talked about what he had prepared long ago, about the King of Yu's power, and what he was going to do next. The former was something he had originally planned to tell the imperial court, while the latter was something he had accidentally said when he was having too much fun with Shang Junlin. Shen Yu could already feel that his good impression of Shang Junlin was too high. Nearly 2 hours had passed since the two finished talking. Shen Yu looked at the sky and said goodbye. Shang Junlin didn't stop him. He sent him to the door and said, "Young Master Shen, if you have anything to do, you can go here. They will follow your orders." Shen Yu didn't refuse. Shang Junlin watched the young man leave until he couldn't be seen. When he returned to the house, there were 2 more people in the house. "Next, you have to cooperate with young Master Shen." Shang Junlin sat where the young man sat just now and said, "Yes." These 2 people were the officials of the imperial court who were supposed to negotiate with Shen Yu. Unexpectedly, Shang Junlin went to see them directly after learning about this matter. No matter how confused they were, they couldn't change His Majesty's mind. When His Majesty talked with young Master Shen, they were next door. They came out after His Majesty left. After Shen Yu went back, he asked his people to come here. Since he had reached an agreement with the imperial court, it was time for him to take action. With his help, the collapse of the King of Yu's power accelerated rapidly. The King of Yu finally panicked. If the previous chaos only affected the external forces, this time it really affected the core of the King of Yu's power. King of Yu had to ask for help from the person who had been helping him behind the scenes. He didn't know that the person was too busy to take care of himself. King An's side was solved unexpectedly smoothly. After all, in the other world, Shang Junlin had figured out all of King An's arrangements. This time, the sudden attack was even more unexpected. King An didn't know how he was exposed until he was defeated. King An was already under control. As for how to deal with him, he only needed to wait for Shang Junlin's order. With Shen Yu's help, the King of Yu's side was also very smooth. After the cooperation, Shen Yu realized how well prepared the imperial court was this time. No matter how hard the King of Yu struggled, he would only be a grasshopper after autumn. Shen Yu, who was busy, didn't have time to think about too many miscellaneous things. When the matter was over, he realized that he hadn't seen Brother Lin for a while. On the contrary, because of the cooperation, he met Shang Junlin more and more often. There was another strange thing. He didn't see Brother Lin among the people sent by the imperial court. Logically speaking, this shouldn't be, unless Brother Lin was deliberately avoiding him. What was there to hide? Shen Yu sneered in his heart. Could it be that Brother Lin felt that it wasn't good to appear in front of him again after his identity was exposed? Shen Yu was used to being alone. This time, he just returned to the state of being alone again. He shouldn't care about it. However, every time he was free, Shen Yu's figure would appear in his mind unconsciously. He also missed the feeling when they were together. "Young Master Shen, what are you thinking about?" Shang Junlin narrowed his eyes when he saw that the young man was distracted. This wasn't the first time. As long as the 2 of them were together, Shang Junlin's attention would always be on him. Shen Yu might not have realized it himself, but Shang Junlin had already noticed it. Who was the young man thinking about? Why was he showing this expression time and time again? Was it the King of Yu? Every time he thought of this possibility, Shang Junlin's ruthlessness would increase. He had already found out what those people did to Shen Yu. He also asked the hidden dragon guards to speed up the search for the Ji family. He didn't know how much Shen Yu was affected. Even if it was only a small effect, he didn't want to let those people off easily. Shen Yu didn't know what the man opposite him was thinking. He stopped thinking and said, "I'm not thinking about anything. We caught a few people recently. Would young Master Shen be interested in meeting them?" Shang Junlin also restrained his emotions and said, "Who is it?" Shen Yu was curious. For Shang Junlin to mention it, the person who was captured must be extraordinary. They are the people who have been secretly controlling King Yu's actions. Young Master Shun should have heard of a saying that spread in Yuju a few years ago. This person is related to this matter. Shun Yu and Shang Junlin went to the dungeon together. The dungeon was modified from a dark room. It couldn't see the sun and the only light came from the torches on the wall. Hearing the footsteps, the person locked in the dungeon raised his head. When he saw who it was, he subconsciously stepped back to hide. He seems to be afraid of you. Shun Yu noticed and said. Shang Junlin curled his lips and said, if you have any questions, you can ask him directly. Shun Yu walked over and squatted down. I'm very curious. What kind of hatred do you have against me that you have been plotting for so many years? The man had been tortured once and was already honest. He answered, you and I really don't have any hatred. You are that person's child. She ruined everything we planned and caused us to lose our home. Now she is dead. You are her only child. If I don't take revenge on you, who else should I take revenge on? You are also the one who controlled me to work for King Yu. Shun Yu's eyes darkened. He didn't expect that this matter would involve his mother who had passed away many years ago. I don't have such great ability. The thing that controlled you was planted in you by your mother. We were just making use of it. The man's tone was full of malice. Shang Junlin walked over and said coldly, you still don't want to be honest. Hearing his voice, the man shrank back and didn't dare to have any evil thoughts. He said honestly, the thing in your body is the Ji family's sacred object, the ring. It was indeed passed on to you by your mother. Your mother was the Ji family's holy maiden. She wasn't supposed to get married and have children. There has never been a precedent of a holy maiden giving birth. It wasn't until we confirmed that you had the ring in your body that we knew that it could be passed on from mother to child regardless of gender. Then, Shun Yu heard a story from the man about more than 10 years ago. It was about the Ji family, about his mother, and about the ring in his body. Shun Yu had never found out about these things. When he came out of the dungeon, his expression was still a little absent-minded. The sky was already dark and a crescent moon hung high in the sky. Shun Yu was digesting the news he had just heard. He didn't pay attention to his feet and tripped. Be careful. A strong arm supported him. Shun Yu stood up and turned to look at the man walking beside him silently. Thank you. Are you thinking about what happened just now? Shang Junlin asked. Shun Yu nodded. I've always been curious about my mother's identity. After investigating for so long, I still couldn't find any clues. It turned out that she was from the Ji family. Even the name I knew was fake. Shun Yu couldn't tell what he was feeling. He sighed. What are your plans after Prince Yu's matter is over? Shang Junlin deliberately revealed this matter to Shun Yu. In order to solve the hidden danger in Shun Yu's body, the Ji family had to take action. Instead of explaining things at the last minute, it was better to let Shun Yu discover the truth himself. Shun Yu did find out some news about the Ji family's involvement these days. When he heard those words, he didn't feel that it was too unbelievable. He just didn't expect that he was also involved with the Ji family. As for his future plans, Shun Yu's eyes flashed for a moment. Is young Master Shun willing to enter the court as an official? Without waiting for Shun Yu to think of a result, Shang Junlin continued, with young Master Shun's talent, you will definitely become a pillar of the Great Huan dynasty. Shun Yu didn't expect to hear these words from the emperor of the Great Huan dynasty. The blankness in his eyes was replaced by shock. Under the moonlight, he stared at the handsome young emperor. He couldn't tell what he was feeling. He didn't even notice that the other's arm was still supporting him. The shadows of the two people were intertwined. From a distance, it looked like the young man was being held in the arms of the tall man in black. Your Majesty, the official who came to report something important stopped and stared in front of him, dumbfounded. So, the real reason why His Majesty personally came to Prince Yu's fief was because of young Master Shun? Genius 1 second. Remember this website, www.bk50. CC Literature Mobile Version Reading URL, mbk50. cc. Chapter 270. Hearing the voice, Shun Yu came back to his senses. He noticed that the distance between him and Shang Junlin was too close, so he quietly took a step back. Since there was someone coming over, he couldn't do anything. Shang Junlin let go of his hand and a trace of regret flashed through his eyes. If you have something else to do, I'll take my leave first. Shen Yu bowed his head and turned to leave. Shang Junlin didn't stop him. He stared at the direction where the young man left. The official who interrupted the two stood aside. Feeling the displeasure from the man, he wanted to cry but had no tears. He really didn't mean to disturb them. If he knew that the emperor had such thoughts, he wouldn't dare to come over at this time no matter how bold he was. After a while, Shang Junlin closed his eyes and suppressed the complicated emotions in his heart. He said lightly, "What's the matter?" The official quickly explained the purpose of his visit. He came to report to Shang Junlin about the progress of King Yu's matter and the news from King An's fief. Now that King An was under control, Shang Junlin still had to give orders as to what to do. As for King Yu, he wouldn't have known if he didn't investigate. After a careful investigation, he found out that King Yu had secretly planned many things over the years. When these things were spread back, it would definitely shock the imperial court. Under the night sky, Shen Yu walked out of the courtyard alone. The carriage was already waiting outside the residence. This was Shang Junlin's residence in Yuju. King Yu would never have thought that in the bustling area of Yuju, the person he regarded as his lifelong enemy had been living here for a long time. After getting into the carriage, Jiang Huiqing poured a cup of tea for him. Shen Yu took a sip and asked, "Why are you here?" "After finishing my work, I saw that you hadn't returned, so I came to see you." Jiang Huiqing said. "Have you heard of the Ji family?" Since he had clues about his mother, Shen Yu had to investigate further. "I've only read a little about them in books. According to the records, the Ji family has been good at medicine for generations. They have been in seclusion for many years. It won't be easy for you to find traces of the Ji family. It's fine. Get someone to investigate. The person behind King Yu might be related to the Ji family." Shen Yu didn't say anything definite. When he heard the news today, his first reaction was to send his own people to investigate. With the example of the Prince of Yu, it was difficult for him to completely let down his guard. Even though he had a better impression of Shang Junlin than expected. After instructing his subordinates, Shen Yu returned to his room to rest. His movements these days were not small. The King of Yu might have noticed it. There was a pot of flowers by the window. Shen Yu walked over, picked up a small kettle, and watered it. This flower was given to him by Brother Lin. Now, it was here, but Brother Lin was not. Thinking about it, Shen Yu was a little lost in thought. Yu Wangfu. Everyone in Prince Yu's mansion was busy. The matter that had been solved was in a deadlock again, especially those that were directly or indirectly handled by Shen Yu. More or less, there were problems. The King of Yu was not a fool. At this point, it was impossible for him to not notice the problem. However, he refused to believe that Shen Yu would betray him. After all, he had done something to Shen Yu from the beginning. In the study, the King of Yu anxiously paced back and forth. A few of his confidants stood below, but no one spoke. These days, the King of Yu was in a bad mood because they said something they shouldn't have. Too many people were punished by him. Whether it was his aides or servants, they tried to speak less in front of him, so as not to lose their lives because of a word. A servant came in and whispered a few words to the King of Yu. The King of Yu waved his hand. "That's all for today. You can leave now. We will talk about other things another day." "Yes." The confidants bowed their heads and left. In the blink of an eye, only the King of Yu was left in the large study. He stood alone for a while. The door of the study was opened and a middle-aged man came in. "Your Highness." The King of Yu turned around. After a few polite words, he asked directly, "You said before that the person who used that thing would never betray me. Now, I ask you, is there really no accident? Normally, there won't be. But I feel that the person has already betrayed me. What do you want, Your Highness? This is your mistake. You should solve it. When we made the deal, you promised that this matter would be foolproof. I don't care what method you use. You must solve this matter properly. Yes, We will help your highness. Shen Yu was still busy. After knowing that he had been controlled by someone, he couldn't remain indifferent. Finding the person who controlled him became the most important thing. Without waiting for him to come up with a result, the imperial court sent someone again, saying that they had found some information about what happened when he first came to Yuju. After tidying himself up, Shen Yu once again appeared in the house where Shang Junlin was temporarily staying. The tall man sat by the table, playing with a wooden token in his hand. When he saw Shen Yu, Shang Junlin handed the token to him. Young Master Shen, have you seen this before? Shen Yu took the token from the man's palm and looked at it carefully. There were complicated patterns engraved on the token, and they looked familiar. Shen Yu rubbed the token with his fingers, searching for such patterns in his memory. Shang Junlin didn't say anything to disturb him. After some time, Shen Yu's eyes flashed. He remembered. When he first came to Yuju, when he was unconscious and sick, there was a person who followed the king of Yu who had a token like this on his waist. Shen Yu told him about his discovery. He asked, "Where did you get this token? Do you still remember the person who was locked up in the dungeon? We managed to get a lot of useful information from him. Following these clues, we managed to capture some people. These people were the ones who carried the tokens with them. We specially invited young Master Shen over because we learned something about you from these people," Shang Junlin said. Shen Yu sat down and put the token on the table. "I'd like to hear more. Young Master Shen, when you first came to Yuju, you were seriously ill. It was done by these people. They made a deal with the King of Yu to help him control you. They wanted the King of Yu to help them destroy the Ji family after he succeeded. These people betrayed the Ji family, so it was not strange for them to have such a request." Shen Yu smiled, but there was not much of a smile in his eyes. "The King of Yu is willing to work hard for me. Originally, we caught these people to get rid of the hidden danger in your body, but..." Shang Junlin paused for a moment. "The people who attacked you at that time had already passed away. The people who left behind don't know how to remove the seal on your body." "Passed away?" "Yes, it is not so easy to control someone. The two people who attacked you at that time have both died. According to the confessions of those people, this kind of control was irreversible." Shang Junlin did not believe in these people's nonsense. Shen Yu was already out of control. When the hidden dragon guards found the traces of the Ji family, the seal on Shen Yu's body would no longer be a threat. Without Shang Junlin saying it, Shen Yu understood that the two people's deaths were the price they paid for trying to control him. "You don't have to worry. I will find the Ji family and let them remove the seal for you." Shen Yu was not worried. He had lived with this illness for so long and was already used to it. After knowing that he did not do things for the King of Yu, he was confused about the future for a moment. But it was only for a moment. No matter what the future would be, he knew what he had to do now. "Your Majesty, don't you think that you are too concerned about me?" Shen Yu rested his chin on his hands and looked at the man sitting opposite him. It was really strange. Based on their experiences together, Shen Yu found it hard to associate the man in front of him with the rumored ruthless emperor. "You work for the imperial court. Of course, I have to be concerned about you." Shang Junlin did not say anything and allowed the young man to look at him. "Your Majesty, do you treat every official like this?" Shen Yu continued to ask. "Of course not. If this was said to any official in the imperial court, they would definitely laugh at the person who said it. What if I say that I only treat you well?" Shang Junlin looked into the young man's eyes. The man's eyes were dark and deeper than the night sky. At this moment, Shen Yu saw himself in the other party's eyes. He opened his mouth but did not know what to say. What did he mean by only treat me well? Shen Yu did not want to think about the deeper meaning of this sentence. Silence spread, and the room fell into silence. He was the one who spoke first and tentatively lifted the layers of curtains in the dark night. But when he saw the truth, he was also the one who was speechless. "Don't think too much," Shang Junlin suddenly said. "There is one more thing. King Yu is already suspicious of you. He might do something in the next few days." Shen Yu pulled back his thoughts. "I know. With such a big movement, even if King Yu is a pig, he should have realized that something is wrong." From the moment he decided to cooperate with the imperial court, Shen Yu expected that such a day would come. If he was afraid because of this, he would not be him. Shang Junlin did not feel the young man's fear, but it was not strange. The young man dared to go against him because of King Yu. Now that the enemy was King Yu, what was there to be afraid of? Using the excuse that King Yu was going to cause trouble and was worried about the young man's safety, Shang Junlin and Shen Yu got closer and closer. After interacting with him, Shen Yu felt more and more that Da Huan, the young emperor who ascended the throne, was very different from the rumors. What he felt most was that Da Huan seemed to be very skillful in taking care of him. Occasionally, when he met the officials sent by the imperial court, Shen Yu could feel the surprise from them, especially when Shang Junlin took care of him. After interacting with him more, Shang Junlin gave Shen Yu a stronger sense of familiarity. Shen Yu had doubts in his heart. He wanted to figure out where this sense of familiarity came from. Gongzi, do you want to put away the things in Gongzi Lin's room? The maid walked in and asked. Shen Yu put down his pen. Speaking of which, Brother Lin had left for a while. At first, Shen Yu would think of him. Later, when things got busy and he had frequent contact with Shang Junlin, he did not think of this person. After the maid reminded him, he suddenly realized that the sense of familiarity that Shang Junlin gave him was almost the same as that of Brother Lin. What was the connection between these two people? Don't touch the things in that room first, Shen Yu said. Shen Yu did not think that two different people could give him the same feeling. When he interacted with Shang Junlin with suspicion, he felt that there were many similarities between them. For example, their height was about the same. There were also some small details when they interacted. Some things were like this. When you did not realize it, you did not feel anything. When you had doubts, it would reveal that there was something wrong everywhere. Some habits were engraved in the bones. Shen Yu and Shang Junlin had interacted for a long time, so it was hard not to notice it. But it was also because of this that Shen Yu felt it was very inconceivable. If his guess was true, the dignified emperor of Da Huan had disguised himself to get close to him, and he had almost been kept in a golden house by him. He had to endure his arrogance and order. When he took care of him, he had to take care of him no matter how small the matter was. No matter which one it was, an ordinary man might not be able to accept it. But not only did he accept it, he even accepted it well. What did he want? This was the thing that Shen Yu could not understand the most. It was also the important reason why he felt that his guess was a whimsical one. Why are you looking at me? Shang Junlin felt the gaze on him, so he asked with a smile. I feel that you are a bit similar to an old friend of mine. Shen Yu retracted his gaze, and there was a trace of nostalgia in his tone. Is that person very important to young Master Shen? Shang Junlin's hands, which were hanging in his sleeves, unconsciously clenched. Could it be that someone had approached Shen Yu when he was not aware? As if he did not feel the man's gloomy face in an instant, Shen Yu nodded. Yes, it's a pity that he left without saying goodbye. You don't have to take it to heart that he left without saying goodbye. I call him Brother Lin. He also works for the imperial court. Do you know where he is now? Genius 1 second. Remember this website, www.bk50. CC Literature Mobile Version Reading Website, mbk50. CC. Chapter 271. Shen Yu turned to look at the man and nodded. If it wasn't for him, I'm afraid I wouldn't have realized that I was being controlled by Prince Yu so quickly. Shen Yu had been thinking about when he realized that something was wrong these days. The result was obvious. Everything happened after Brother Lin appeared. He didn't know if Brother Lin did something to make him realize that something was wrong. No matter what, he owed Brother Lin a favor. Of course, if Brother Lin lied to him, he wouldn't let it go easily. Shen Yu clearly distinguished between kindness and hatred. He would never confuse kindness with resentment. He watched the man's expression, not letting go of any changes. Even if it was impossible, Shen Yu still felt that his guess was right. At this moment, Shang Junlin's mood was very complicated. Is this young Master Lin very special to young Master Shen? If you knew that he lied to you, what would you do? That depends on what is hiding from me. If it's not important or necessary, I won't say anything. Shang Junlin began to think about what his behavior was. After saying so much, you still haven't told me where he is now. Noticing the change in the man's expression, Shen Yu continued. Shang Junlin didn't know how to answer. His intuition told him that he couldn't lie. He didn't think that Shen Yu would ask this question for no reason. The gap between him and Shen Yu meant that Shen Yu wouldn't ask unless he knew something and was testing him. After figuring this out, Shang Junlin looked at Shen Yu again. The young man didn't look anxious. If you looked carefully, you could even see a hint of ridicule in his eyes. Why didn't your majesty say anything? Shen Yu raised his eyebrows. You already know. Why are you still asking me? Shang Junlin was helpless. Does your majesty admit it? Shen Yu blinked. He just wanted to test him. He didn't expect the other party to admit it directly. Since you've already guessed it, wouldn't it be an additional crime for us to hide it from you? After speaking, Shang Junlin no longer suppressed himself. This time, there was no need for Shen Yu to verify. The man in front of him and Brother Lin's figure completely overlapped. Shen Yu felt a long-lost emotion from him. The two of them walked to a small pavilion and sat down. Shang Junlin sat opposite Shen Yu. He personally poured a cup of tea and handed it to a Yu. Jin apologizes to a Yu for lying to you before. Shen Yu paused in his action of taking the tea. The two words "are you" coming out of Brother Lin's mouth gave him a completely different feeling from Shang Junlin's. He had to admit that he treated Brother Lin differently from others. He had also thought about how the two of them would get along in the future. However, when this person was Shang Junlin, he had no choice but to consider his true identity. After this day, Shen Yu began to deliberately alienate Shang Junlin. He couldn't understand the messy relationship between the two of them, so he had to numb himself with other things. The process of Prince Yu's side had reached a critical juncture. Shen Yu's actions were no longer as smooth as before. Sometimes, he could feel that someone was secretly watching him. Shen Yu knew that these people were most likely sent by Prince Yu, indicating that Prince Yu had become suspicious of him. Young Master Shen, Prince Yu invites you. Shen Yu was about to return to the mansion, but he was stopped halfway. Did Prince Yu say what's the matter? Shen Yu stopped. Young Master Shen, you'll know when you get there. The person's tone was cold. Shen Yu glanced around with the corner of his eyes. He saw a few people dressed as common people staring at him. It seemed that Prince Yu couldn't sit still anymore. Shen Yu didn't make any unnecessary resistance. He nodded and followed the person into the carriage. These people didn't notice that the young man made a subtle gesture with his hand behind his back. The carriage rushed all the way, and soon they arrived at Prince Yu's mansion. After Shen Yu got off the carriage, two powerful bodyguards followed him, one on the left and one on the right. The person who brought him here retreated, and a maid took his place to lead the way for Shen Yu. They didn't speak a word along the way. Shen Yu was taken to the study. Shen Yu had walked this road countless times, but there was no time like today when he was watched by someone in the dark. Shen Yu was very familiar with Prince Yu's forces. He knew that the person hiding in the dark was a secret guard of Prince Yu. He pulled the corner of his mouth. It seemed that the threat he brought to Prince Yu was not small. Prince Yu even sent this secret guard. In the study, in addition to Prince Yu, there were several trusted aides of Prince Yu. They had worked together for many years, so Shen Yu was familiar with these people. Seeing him come in, the study was quiet for a moment. Shen Yu didn't seem to feel anything unusual. His every move was as usual, which made people who were suspicious of him hesitate. I don't know why Your Highness called me here. His performance was too normal. Prince Yu looked at him deeply, as if he wanted to peel off his disguise. Before Shen Yu came in, his performance along the way had been reported by people who were secretly watching him. Because of this, Prince Yu, who was originally certain, was shaken. Prince Yu knew that Shen Yu was a very cautious person. If the other party really betrayed him, it was impossible for him to come to Prince Yu's mansion without any precautions. Because he was a smart person, he knew what it meant to come here. Today, I called you here to ask about the progress of your subordinates. Previously, I didn't consider it thoroughly. You are not in good health, so I gave you all the work to do. Shun Yu's behavior made the King of Yu change his strategy. He only said that he was worried about Shun Yu's health and wanted others to share his worries. Shun Yu was not confused by his flowery words. No matter how nice his words were, it could not change the fact that the King of Yu wanted to take back the power in his hands. The spy had been planted. Shun Yu didn't care about it and directly handed over the power. His action reduced the suspicions of Prince Yu and the others. After the handover, it was already late at night. Prince Yu sent Shun Yu out and said, "The mansion has cleaned up the courtyard where you used to live. I found a famous doctor to take a look at your health. You can stay in the mansion for these 2 days." His tone was full of meaning that he couldn't refuse. Shun Yu looked at the sky. It turned out that Prince Yu was waiting for him here. He also wanted to know what Prince Yu was planning to do, so he didn't refuse. "Your Highness, you have troubled me." Prince Yu's face softened at a speed visible to the naked eye. He ordered the maid to take Shun Yu to rest. The maid took Shun Yu to a small courtyard. Shun Yu was not unfamiliar with this place. When he first came to Yuju, he lived here for a while. He only moved out when his health was better. The layout of the courtyard was almost the same as before. Shun Yu went back to his room. After washing up, he lay on the bed. After Shun Yu left, the confidants who had left came back to the study room again. Prince Yu sat on the main seat and said, "What do you think?" He asked what they thought of Shun Yu's behavior. Prince Yu called Shun Yu here because someone had evidence that Shun Yu was disloyal. However, the evidence was not sufficient. Originally, he should have interrogated Shun Yu today. Unexpectedly, Prince Yu changed his mind halfway. The person who reported Shun Yu was angry. "At this time, why does your Highness still care about old friendship?" "Because this prince doesn't want to disappoint everyone. Shun Yu has worked for this prince for so many years, and everyone recognizes his ability. Everyone also doesn't want this prince to be estranged from him because of some specious evidence, right?" "Your Highness is right. I will leave the things that Shun Yu is in charge of to you. If it is proven that he is disloyal, I will punish him impartially. If not, I don't want the same thing to happen again." Why did Prince Yu let him go so easily? It was not that he believed that Shun Yu would not betray him. It was because he valued Shun Yu's ability. He did not want to lose such a useful subordinate. In addition, those people had promised him that they would give him an obedient and loyal Shun Yu. Before he succeeded, he would not care about this small mistake. Shun Yu also knew that Prince Yu would not do anything to him. That was why he dared to go to the appointment alone. He came here because he wanted to find out why he was seriously ill when he first came to Yuju. Prince Yu did not plan to fall out with Shun Yu. He still wanted to use him. Therefore, Shun Yu was treated the same as usual in Prince Yu's residence. After Shun Yu did not appear for a few days, Song Junlin could not wait any longer. He went to Shun Yu's residence but was told that his master was not there. He sent the hidden dragon guards to investigate and found out that Shun Yu had gone to Prince Yu's residence. Moreover, it had been a few days since Shun Yu went to Prince Yu's residence. The backup plan that Shun Yu left behind had been in action. The people sent by Song Junlin had already obtained the evidence of Prince Yu's crimes. Everything had been arranged. Only the last step was left. In addition, after that day, Shun Yu consciously distanced himself from Song Junlin. As a result, he did not discover that Shun Yu was trapped in Prince Yu's residence. "Your Majesty," the time of the plan had been set. They were only waiting for Song Junlin to give the order. Then, they would be able to uproot Prince Yu's forces. However, at this time, Song Junlin stopped them. "Let them be prepared and wait for my news." At night, Shun Yu put down his book and planned to sleep. A slight noise came from the window. He paused, walked over and opened the window. "Don't move." Suddenly, a pair of hands appeared from behind and pulled Shun Yu away from the window. There was only a small gap in the window. The moonlight came in through the gap. Shun Yu saw the overlapping shadows on the wall. His hand unconsciously held the dagger in his sleeve. "Who are you? What do you want to do?" The distance between the two of them was shortened again. Shun Yu closed his eyes in discomfort and quickly calculated in his mind who had sent the person behind him. The man's voice was low and hoarse. Shen Yu was sure that he had never heard such a voice before. Of course, this could be a deliberate disguise to avoid being discovered. Young Master Shen, how did you get yourself into such a situation? The man was taller than Shen Yu. In order not to be discovered by the people patrolling outside, he had to bend down slightly and whisper in the young man's ear. When he spoke, his breath hit the sensitive ear. Shen Yu was caught off guard. A cold light flashed and his wrist was grabbed by the man. This time, they were in a face-to-face position. Shen Yu was lying in the man's arms. He smelled a familiar scent. His struggling movements suddenly stopped. The man was afraid of hurting him, so he didn't dare to use too much strength. He had a headache because of the young man's struggling. Unexpectedly, the other party suddenly stopped. The noise made by the movement attracted the attention of the people outside. Shen Yu was about to say something when he heard the approaching footsteps. Young Master Shen, what happened? The voice of the guard came from outside the room. These people were arranged by King Yu. In the name of protecting Shen Yu, they were actually monitoring him. Shen Yu knew this. Hearing this, he frowned. Shen Yu's waist was tightened. He heard the man's low voice. Young Master Shen, are you going to hand me over? If Shen Yu was still doubtful before, now he was sure. The man's voice and tone were exactly the same as when Brother Lin said this sentence. How can the emperor of a country come to my room in the middle of the night to be a gentleman? After confirming who it was, Shen Yu laughed angrily. Do you have such a special hobby? Genius 1 second. Remember this site, www.bk50. CC Literature Mobile Version Reading URL, mbk50. cc. Chapter 272. What did he mean by stole your treasure? Shen Yu pursed his lips, but reality didn't give him much time to think about it. The footsteps were getting closer and closer. If he didn't make a sound, the people outside might rush in. Shen Yu gave him a "I'll deal with you later" look and said, "Nothing, I accidentally bumped into the table." The footsteps stopped. Shen Yu was still trapped in the man's arms. They stood by the window. If someone pushed the door open, they would be able to see their intimate posture at first glance. In the darkness, Shen Yu felt his heart beating faster. The people outside seemed to be thinking about something and didn't leave immediately. Shen Yu didn't know the situation outside. In order not to let Shang Junlin be discovered, he could only maintain the current posture. Neither of them spoke. In the silence, time passed quietly. After a long time, the sound of footsteps sounded outside. Shen Yu unconsciously breathed a sigh of relief and found that the two of them still maintained the original posture. They have left. Your Majesty should let me go, right? Shang Junlin didn't seem to have the slightest intention of letting him go. He lowered his head and whispered in the young man's ear, You didn't say anything just now. Was it to protect me? Shen Yu's eyes flashed. I just don't want the dignified emperor to be discovered to have such a hobby. Shang Junlin didn't expose Shen Yu's duplicity. Today, Shen Yu's behavior was enough to show that he had feelings for him. This knowledge made Shang Junlin's heart warm. The uneasiness caused by the young man's deliberate alienation slowly disappeared. Yes, Yu is thinking about my reputation. Shang Junlin reluctantly let go of the young man. There was one more person in the room. In order not to be discovered by the subordinates of King Yu, Shen Yu got up and extinguished the last candle. Your Majesty, why are you here? I heard that you were taken away by King Yu. I was worried, so I came to see. Shang Junlin didn't say anything. When he received the news, he almost impulsively ordered his men to take action. However, he was worried that he would hurt Shen Yu, so he suppressed the thought. I did it on purpose. King Yu had been suspicious of me for a long time. I also wanted to know what happened when I first came to Yuju, so I played along. Have you ever thought about what would happen if King Yu really wanted to kill you? Shang Junlin interrupted Shen Yu. I didn't come to the Yu Wang Fu without any precautions. Shen Yu curled his lips. Is your Majesty worried about me? Yes, Shang Junlin admitted directly. I don't want to see you get hurt. Shen Yu didn't expect Shang Junlin to be so direct. He was silent for a while. What does your Majesty plan to do? Shun Yu wasn't stupid enough to think that Shang Junlin did all this just because he wanted to surrender. Whether it was when he pretended to be Brother Lin or now, Shun Yu could feel his sincerity. However, his thoughts were too chaotic and he didn't want to completely break the barrier that was no longer strong. I won't come here for nothing. I've prepared for so long. It's time to take action. Just you wait. After tonight, King Yu will no longer be a threat. After he finished speaking, Shun Yu vaguely heard the noise outside. What he didn't know was that a large number of imperial soldiers had rushed into the Yu Wang Fu. It was chaotic. Only the small courtyard he was in was as quiet as before. Do you want to rest for a while? Shang Junlin stood by the window. When you wake up, it should be over. Shun Yu shook his head. He wanted to witness the failure of King Yu with his own eyes. The front courtyard of King Yu Wang Fu was in a mess. King Yu couldn't figure out why the imperial army rushed into the Yu Wang Fu when he was just sleeping. He couldn't figure out why he didn't receive any news when so many people entered his fief. After being escorted out of the warm bed, King Yu was restrained by the soldiers. He could only watch helplessly as an endless stream of people poured in. In front of the army brought by Shang Junlin, the power he was so proud of was so weak that it couldn't even withstand a single blow. I am King Yu who was appointed by the former emperor. What do you want to do? No one answered him. Shun Qingran, who lived in King Yu Wang Fu, was also taken out. He was treated the same as King Yu's aides. He knelt on the ground and watched the people who were valued by King Yu being taken out. He couldn't help but wonder if Shun Yu would also be taken out in such a sorry state. As long as he thought of Shun Yu's sorry state, the fear in Shun Qingran's heart decreased a lot. He didn't know where these soldiers came from, but it didn't stop him from wanting to see Shun Yu's sorry state. He waited and waited. Everyone in the Yu Wang Fu was taken out, but Shun Yu still didn't appear. Shun Qingran felt uneasy. He was sure that Shun Yu was locked up in the Yu Wang Fu. Why was everyone controlled, but Shun Yu still didn't appear? King Yu also noticed this. He tried his best to raise his head and looked around to make sure that Shun Yu didn't appear in the crowd. These soldiers didn't even let go of the servants. It didn't make sense that Shun Yu was safe and sound. Thinking of what his subordinates said about Shun Yu being disloyal, King Yu's heart sank. In the only undisturbed small courtyard, Shun Yu and Shang Junlin walked out together. The moonlight was bright, casting a layer of silver light on the ground. The guards in the courtyard had unknowingly changed. They were the hidden dragon guards brought by Shang Junlin. They hid in the dark to protect the safety of the people in the courtyard. A soldier wearing armor walked in, knelt on one knee, and reported the progress outside. With the clues provided by Shun Yu's defection, the plan went smoothly. No matter what kind of disguise the forces of the Yu Wang Fu used, they were all eliminated. The Yu Wang Fu suffered heavy losses, and the imperial court's losses were minimized. The general who came to report the situation was one of the generals who had gone on an expedition with Shang Junlin. He knew more about Shang Junlin's visit to the Yu Wang Fu's fief than the others. He also knew that Shang Junlin took action in advance today because of a young man. He carefully glanced at the young man standing beside Shang Junlin. The general admitted that the young man had a very outstanding appearance, but he didn't think that His Majesty was a person who valued beauty. Otherwise, how could His Majesty's harem be empty until now when there were so many beauties in Da Huan? Shun Yu didn't know what the general was thinking. He was thinking that tonight didn't seem to be the time they planned to take action. Did Shang Junlin take action in advance because of him? The front courtyard was still noisy. King Yu was shouting about his identity. However, his identity was completely useless tonight. No matter what he said, the guards didn't respond, as if they were deaf. King Yu hated the feeling of being controlled by others. Ever since he came to the fief, he had never been humiliated like this. He wasn't even sure who was the one who did it. The fear of the unknown swept over him. After a long period of smooth sailing, he almost forgot that there was a stronger force above him. Where is Shun Yu? King Yu gritted his teeth. There is another person in my residence. Are you looking for me, Your Highness? A cold voice sounded. King Yu subconsciously looked towards the source of the voice. A young man in blue stood beside the man in black and slowly walked over. He didn't have any shackles on him. King Yu could faintly feel the respect of others wherever he went. King Yu's eyes widened and he suddenly lost his voice. How could he not understand that Shun Yu had indeed sought refuge with others? He was so shocked that he didn't realize how long he had been staring at Shun Yu. Shang Junlin said unhappily, "Have you seen enough?" The familiar yet strange voice pulled King Yu's thoughts back. He turned his head stiffly and looked at the man beside Shun Yu. Why did he come here? And he was with Shun Yu? King Yu's heart was filled with all kinds of questions. These questions were tangled up and became more and more confusing. Why are you two together? King Yu heard Shun Qingran's incredulous voice. Shun Qingran had been waiting for Shun Yu to be escorted out. He wanted to see Shun Yu's battered and exhausted appearance with his own eyes. He waited and waited. Indeed, he waited, but the scene he waited for was completely different from what he imagined. Shun Yu was carefully protected by the tall man beside him. Not only was she not hurt at all, but there was only respect wherever she went. As for that man, Shun Qingran had been to the palace before. Even if he had never been in contact with the status of Da Huan, he could still recognize that the man in black was the emperor of Da Huan. The man who refused to look at him and was dismissive of him only showed gentleness in front of Shun Yu. Why? Why? Shun Qingran clamored in his heart. No matter where, Shun Yu would always get more attention. It was like this when he was beside King Yu, and it was also the same when he was the emperor. Shun Yu tilted his head and looked at Shun Qingran. You know him? I. Shun Qingran suddenly woke up. With his current identity, he shouldn't know the emperor of Da Huan. In order to escape from the palace, he gave up the identity of Shun Qingran. If he admitted it, just this point alone was enough to sentence him to death. No, I'm just curious. Isn't young Master Shun the prince's man? Why are you with someone else? Shun Qingran gritted his teeth and asked with concern. Shun Yu retracted his gaze and casually glanced at King Yu. I'm just correcting some mistakes. King Yu's heart trembled. Why did Shun Yu say that? Did he know something? Soon, he knew that he wasn't overthinking. When Shun Yu looked at him again, it was as if he was looking at a dead man. King Yu, why don't you say it yourself? Am I your man? At the same time, King Yu felt a cold gaze fall on him. It was from Shang Junlin. King Yu didn't doubt that if looks could kill, he would have been killed by Shang Junlin countless times. Shun Yu didn't expect him to really answer. He continued, in order to make people listen to your orders, King Yu didn't hesitate to drug them. How many people in the world can do such a thing? Feeling the hand hanging in his sleeve being wrapped by a warm big hand, Shun Yu paused and changed the topic. King Yu was unwilling to submit to others and tried to overthrow the imperial court. I've been with King Yu for several years. Today, I want to accuse King Yu of plotting rebellion. Your Majesty, please investigate carefully. King Yu's face changed greatly when his voice fell. No matter how many protective umbrellas the previous emperor left for King Yu, once he was convicted of treason, there was no possibility for him to rise again. Shun Yu, do you really want to be so ruthless? Don't forget that you've been working for me for many years. You've been in charge of all these things. If you accuse me of treason, don't think you can escape. Seeing that there was no way out, King Yu's face was ferocious. At this moment, his hatred for Shun Yu was greater than anything else. His many years of planning were ruined. Even if he died, he wanted to drag Shun Yu down with him. Shun Yu's face didn't change. Of course, he knew the consequences of his actions. No matter what the reason was, he did those things himself. He wouldn't refute or defend himself. He would do whatever he wanted. From the moment he decided to cooperate with the imperial court, he had expected his end. There was nothing to regret. Compared to letting the person who manipulated him ascend to a position that shouldn't be coveted, this result was exactly what Shun Yu wanted. It was a pity that he was destined to be unable to respond. Shun Yu used a little strength to break free from the man's hand. He wouldn't delve into what kind of feelings this was. Was it friendship? Or love? It was no longer important. The young man's hand broke free from his palm. Shang Junlin's heart suddenly sank. He had planned to remove Shunyu from this matter. Who would have thought that the other party already had an idea in his heart? There were so many people present. He directly said it out loud. Did he not care about his own future at all? Pulling Shunyu's arm, Shang Junlin glanced at Qingyu without the slightest emotion. Then, he dragged him away. The man was tall and had long legs. His strides were big. Shunyu stumbled behind him. He could feel that the man was angry. Why? Was it because of what he said? Suddenly, the man stopped and pressed him against the wall. Shunyu snorted. Your Majesty is angry? Yes, the man's dark eyes seemed to be hiding a cluster of fire. From now on, without my permission, no one can touch you, including yourself. Genius. 1 second. Remember this website, www.bk50. CC Literature Mobile Version Website, mbk50. CC. Chapter 273. The man was like an enraged lion. Shunyu could feel the dangerous aura coming from the man, but strangely, he was not afraid at all. Why is he so angry? Is it because of me? There was no need to verify, the answer was obvious. Shunyu raised his head and met the man's gaze. He saw a burning flame in the man's eyes, and this flame was burning because of him. Realizing this, his heart started to beat violently, uncontrollably. After a long time, Shunyu looked away, but Shang Junlin did not allow him to escape. He pinched his chin and made him maintain his original position. You, remember my words. Shunyu chuckled and raised his eyelids. Why is your Majesty angry? I'm just an insignificant person. Now that Qingyu's matter is over, I have no other use. If it's just an act, this play should be over. You think I'm acting? The burning flame burned even more fiercely. Shang Junlin almost laughed out of anger. Do you think it's necessary for me to go through so much trouble to deal with Qingyu? Even to the extent of sacrificing myself? The smile in Shunyu's eyes did not diminish. Otherwise? I'm doing this for you, Shang Junlin said angrily. When his voice fell, the expression on Shunyu's face froze for a moment, as if he couldn't believe it. For me? Yes, Shang Junlin rubbed the delicate skin on the young man's chin with his fingers, slightly narrowing his eyes. From the beginning to the end, I came for you. As long as you are here, even if Qingyu is not here, I will come in person. As if he was shocked by the man's words, Shunyu did not respond for a long time. Looking at the young man who seemed to be in a daze, Shang Junlin felt distressed. He softened his tone and said, You have made a great contribution to Qingyu's matter. You don't have to sacrifice yourself for such a person. Take good care of your body and leave the rest to me, okay? Sacrificing himself for Qingyu, Shang Junlin sneered in his heart. How could he allow such a thing to happen? Whether he lived or died, Qingyu could forget about having anything to do with his Ayu. Shunyu stared fixedly at Shang Junlin. He saw the stubbornness, dominance, and deep affection in his eyes. This man was the emperor of Da Heng. He had everything, but he was willing to put down his status for him. It would be a lie to say that he wasn't moved, but Shunyu was also very clear-headed. He was a monarch, a minister who worked for a traitor. There were too many things between them. Even if His Majesty doesn't pursue the matter, the court officials won't treat it as if nothing happened. If he didn't care about Shang Junlin, he could let him do whatever he wanted. However, Shunyu cared. He didn't want this young emperor to bear a bad name because of him. Shang Junlin's heart softened when he felt the young man's softening. You, don't worry. No one will say anything. Your Majesty, you don't have to do this. I will take responsibility for what I did. Before Shunyu could finish, Shang Junlin interrupted, You betrayed Qingyu because of me. If I don't do anything, I will feel uneasy. Hearing this, Shunyu looked at him with a complicated expression. Your Majesty's ability to invert right and wrong is beyond my reach. Shang Junlin wasn't disturbed at all. Isn't that so? Then you, tell me, why did you suddenly agree with the court halfway? Shunyu was speechless. After thinking about it carefully, he realized that this matter indeed had something to do with Shang Junlin. If Shang Junlin didn't appear, he definitely wouldn't have turned to the court so easily. You did these things because of me. He also helped me solve a big problem. His merits far outweigh his faults. There's no need to mention the past. The court acted too quickly. King Yu didn't even have time to react before his forces were uprooted. The news of King Yu and King An's attempted rebellion caused an uproar in the court. At this time, the ministers in the court finally knew what the emperor had been doing during this time. They thought to themselves, "Your Majesty really doesn't make a move. Once you make a move, it's like a thunderbolt." Shen Yu didn't know what Shang Junlin had done. His identity directly became a person who was ordered to find evidence of King Yu's rebellion in the fief of King Yu. The key was that no one objected to it. After King Yu was arrested, the imperial army cleaned up the remaining forces in the fief of King Yu. After leaving a few officials to deal with the aftermath, Shang Junlin returned to the capital with his people. Shen Yu didn't have time to react before he was packed up and taken into the returning team. Shang Junlin was very busy these days. After that day, Shen Yu didn't see him for several days. However, he was invited by many officials from the imperial court. They didn't have any reaction to his change of identity. It seemed that this was how it should be. Shen Yu began to doubt whether he had really received such a secret edict before he came to the fief of King Yu. Not only him, but his subordinates also had the same doubts. Jiang Huiqing was appointed as a representative to inquire about this matter. On the carriage back to the capital, Jiang Huiqing poured tea for Shen Yu. "Young master, those rumors." Shen Yu only knew what Jiang Huiqing asked. Shang Junlin said that he would deal with this matter. Shen Yu didn't care about the follow-up. Unexpectedly, the other party directly made a big move. With the premise that he was ordered to come here, no matter what he did for King Yu before, he couldn't be investigated. Shen Yu picked up the teacup and took a sip. It doesn't matter whether the rumors are true or not. When everyone believes it, the false will become true. Just like now, Shen Yu's resume had become beautiful. When he returned to the capital, he could accept the reward and start over in the capital. "I didn't expect that His Majesty would be so considerate for young master." As Shen Yu's confidant, Jiang Huiqing already knew that the young master Lin who interacted with Shen Yu before was His Majesty in disguise. With his understanding of the Emperor of Dahuan, if this matter didn't really happen to Shen Yu, he wouldn't believe it. The more he knew, the more he couldn't doubt His Majesty's intentions. However, Jiang Huiqing was still very worried about his young master. Since ancient times, emperors were fickle. Who knew if today's affection would become a sharp blade that pierced the vital point in the future? "Huiqing, what are your plans in the future?" His Majesty already knows the inside story of the imperial examination. "Do you want to take back the achievements you deserve?" "It's good for me to follow young master. It's boring to enter the imperial court as an official." Jiang Huiqing was stunned for a moment and answered, "Don't worry. You can think about it slowly. Tell me when you've made up your mind." The young man held the hot tea with both hands. The dense steam rose and blurred his delicate eyes. Jiang Huiqing's stirred emotions slowly calmed down. He really didn't want to continue to enter the imperial court as an official. After such a thing happened, it was impossible to say that there was no knot in his heart. The current situation was very good. Shen Yu wouldn't force his subordinates. After all, he wouldn't treat them unfairly. "When I return to the capital this time, I don't know what expression Count North will have when he sees me and Shen Qingran. His favorite child became a criminal who plotted a rebellion, and his son, who was not favored since childhood, became a great hero who quelled the rebellion." Thinking of the wonderful expression that might appear on the face of Duke Shunbei, Shen Yu became expectant. Before he returned to the capital, the deeds of Shen Yu had been spread in the capital. The officials who didn't know the truth came to congratulate Count North. "Like father, like son. We haven't heard from young Master Shen for a long time. Who would have thought that he quietly made such a great contribution? It's really enviable that Count North has such a son. Count North has a successor. You flatter me. It's just a small contribution. It's not worth mentioning." Count North was happy, but his feelings were very complicated. He had never paid much attention to Shen Yu, his son. The relationship between the two fell to the freezing point because of the incident of entering the palace. This time, Shen Yu made a great contribution. For Count North, he didn't know whether to be happy or sad. The residents of Count North became lively again because of Shen Yu. Outsiders didn't know the inside story and only thought that with such a great contribution in hand, the residents of Count North had a promising future. Some people even asked about Shen Yu's marriage situation, wanting to use the marriage to further deepen the relationship with the residents of Count North. Shen Yu knew nothing about this. On the other hand, Shang Junlin was furious when he heard the news from the capital. The hidden dragon guard who delivered the news knelt down. He felt the pressure around him getting lower and lower. He didn't even dare to breathe. Shang Junlin rubbed the letter in his hand. He had indeed neglected this point. Shen Yu was old and had made a great contribution. It was not strange that the old foxes in the imperial court would be tempted. After a long time, the hidden dragon guard heard a voice that was neither happy nor angry. Tell Count North that I have my own ideas about young Master Shen's marriage. Tell him not to make a decision on his own. When the emperor's order came, Count North was already looking for Shen Yu. The marriage was a matter between the two families. He saw a few families who had made great contributions in the imperial court. If they were successful, Count North could use this opportunity to improve. The emperor said. Count North had no choice but to suppress his reluctance. Count North, you don't have to worry. Since His Majesty said so, we can see that he thinks highly of young Master Shen. If His Majesty thinks highly of young Master Shen will definitely make great contributions in the imperial court. Moreover, the marriage arranged by His Majesty will only be better than what we see. You're right. Count North ignored the uneasiness in his heart. He ordered people to tidy up the biggest courtyard in the Count North's residence for Shen Yu to live in. Madame Yu, who originally wanted to do something to Shen Yu's marriage, was so angry that she smashed everything in the house when she heard the news. Not many people knew that Shen Qingran had escaped from the palace. Shang Junlin didn't care if there was such a person in the palace. Even the people in the Count North's residence didn't know about it. This time, Shen Qingran would return to the capital with a criminal record and give them a big surprise. The carriage was shaking. It was getting closer and closer to the capital. On this day, the weather was clear. The carriages stopped by the river for a short rest. Shen Yu had stayed in the carriage for many days. He took the opportunity to come out and get some fresh air. Several ministers who were returning to the capital with him saw him and wanted to talk to him. Suddenly, they saw a man in black walking over and pulling his companions away. Shang Junlin didn't hide his preferential treatment of Shen Yu. After getting along with him for many days, it was hard for them not to know. When they saw Shang Junlin coming over, they naturally avoided him and left some space for the two of them. Are you? Shen Yu turned around. Has His Majesty finished his work? Shang Junlin was busy dealing with the affairs of Prince Yu and Prince An. They hadn't seen each other for many days. Shang Junlin nodded and walked towards Shen Yu. I heard some news from the capital. A Yu's father is looking for a suitable wife for a Yu. What kind of wife does a Yu want to marry? He's quite a busybody. Shen Yu leaned against the tree. Did His Majesty come just to talk to me about this? I came to tell you that I have passed down the order. Your marriage will be arranged by me. The distance between the two of them was getting closer and closer. Shen Yu stared at the man for a while. Suddenly, he reached out and grabbed the man's collar and pulled hard. What kind of marriage does His Majesty plan to arrange for me? Shang Junlin put one hand on the trunk behind Shen Yu and covered the young man under his body. What kind of wife does a Yu want? The two of them were too close. Their breaths were intertwined. Except for Shang Junlin, Shen Yu had never been so close to anyone. When the man spoke, his warm breath sprayed on the young man's face. Shen Yu subconsciously tilted his head. He didn't know what to think, but he stopped himself from tilting his head. Is His Majesty really willing to arrange a marriage for me? Chen Yu didn't know why he asked this question, but this question had undoubtedly broken the barrier that the two of them had tacitly erected between them. Their relationship had been maintained at a very subtle point. If they took a step forward or a step back, the result would be different. Before, the two of them tacitly stopped their relationship at this subtle point and didn't break it. Today, Shinyu tentatively took a step forward. He stared at the man's face and saw that after he said this sentence, the man's eyes instantly darkened. His dark eyes were like a bottomless abyss that wanted to suck the person in front of him in. Genius. 1 second. Remember this website, www.bk50. CC Literature Mobile Version Reading URL, mbk50. CC. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.